7 o'clock, so I'm going to start reading. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Shrewsbury Board of Selectmen will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. All meetings and hearings listed in the agenda will also be done so through remote participation. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at www.shrewsburymA.gov/coronavirus. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen or watch the meeting may do so by visiting www.shrewsburymediaconnection.org. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the town's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. To participate in the public comment portion of this meeting, dial 1-636-495-1574 and enter the following PIN, 603-591-308#. Please mute your device until the chair of the Board of Selectmen addresses your agenda item or opens the meeting to public comment. As a preliminary matter, this is Beth Cassavant, Chair. Please permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. John LeBeau.
Present, aye.
John Samia.
Present.
Maurice DiPaolo.
Present.
James Kane. Not yet. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Kevin Mizikar.
Present.
Valerie Clemmy.
Present.
Bernie Cahill.
Present.
Keith Elms. Stephen Madaus. Anticipated speakers on the, thanks, Stephen. Anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative. Kevin Griffin.
Present.
Neil Joyce.
Present.
Matt Salad.
Present.
Jeff McElvray.
Present.
Jason Molina.
Present.
Melanie McGee.
Present.
This open meeting of the Board of Selectmen is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of COVID-19. In order to mitigate the transmission of COVID-19, we've been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the Governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Board of Selectmen is convening by Google Meet as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and that take care not to share your screen on your computer unless asked by the chairperson or the staff person. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. We will now turn to the first item on the agenda, but before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I, as the chair, will introduce each board member or staff member who has the lead role for this particular item or guest speaker associated with the item on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members first and then to staff members, inviting each by name to provide any comment or questions. I will then call upon the members to offer a motion and then for a second. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Remember that unless a document is being shared, your camera feed is triggered by your speaking or background noise. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps to generate accurate minutes. For others in attendance that are expected to present, please hold until your name is called to present. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Remember that unless a document is being shared, your camera feed is triggered by your speaking or background noise. Please remember to speak clearly. After your presentation, members of the board or committee will be given the opportunity to ask questions. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. For those of you that are on phones, it is *6 to mute and unmute. So this is the Tuesday, July 28th, 2020 meeting of the Board of Selectmen. And I'm going to call the meeting to order and start with item number 1, which is to approve the bills, payrolls, and warrants.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay. Motion has been made and seconded. We'll take a roll call vote. Mr. LeBeau,
Aye.
Mr. Samia,
Aye.
Mr. DiPaolo,
Aye.
Mr. Kane.
Aye.
Item number 2 is announcements and reports. I don't believe I have any announcements. Do any board members have any announcements? Okay, then we will move on to item number 3, which is the town manager's report.
Madam Chair, for the board this evening, I wanted to let everyone know that we have recorded and is now available through the SMC YouTube channel, the recording of presentations for town meeting that will be held on August 8th. Individuals are able to view that. And earlier today, with the leadership of Ms. Clemmy, we printed out all the remaining in-house materials for town meeting packets, and we will receive the town meeting books within the next day or so to be mailed out to all town meeting members, and they should receive those in the coming days through the mail. And we'll just ask everyone to diligently review those books and take the opportunity to bring those materials with you to the meeting. And also, we have scheduled a pre-town meeting for anyone that is interested 1 week from this evening at 6 o'clock. It'll be Tuesday, August 4th. That's all I have for my general manager's report.
Okay, Mr. Mizikar, I would like to just compliment you on the town meeting video that was recorded. It's very informative. You and assistant town manager I'm not through the whole thing yet, but of what I've seen so far, I think it's very helpful. And I hope that many town meeting members take advantage of the opportunity to learn more about the warrant before we actually get to town meeting.
Great,
Item
thank
number
you.
4 under financial business is the budget report. So I'll turn that back over to you, Mr. Mizikar.
Just one preliminary comment. I heard from Rep. Kane today, and there are obviously other news reports that it looks like the next step in the state budget picture will be a 3-month step where they'll fund the state through October. And that should give us a good picture of, what longer term plans are for, state aid and aid to municipalities, and should put us in a good position as they wrap that up. And we would be likely holding a town meeting in October, so it could coincide very well with a longer term budget if this is the final stutter step before the rest of the year is passed. So that's all I have. No further updates on FY20 or 21 as we now wait for town meeting.
Okay. Item number 5 is also a presentation or report from Mr. Mizikar on the COVID-19.
Sure, thank you. And I'll just take a moment and share my screen. The few slides for everyone. Provide a general report on the positive cases from the beginning within the community. From our first case on March 19th through today, there's 346 positive cases. That's actually an increase of 8 from the last Board of Selectmen's meeting, not 7. So we received an additional case today, and I forgot to update the change there. Over the previous 7 days, not including today, there have been 7 positive cases, which is 1 case per day, which is still well below, obviously, our peak and is below the prior 14-day period. Still cases in the community, obviously, so we need to be cautious. We continue to see little outbreaks and flare-ups throughout the communities in the Commonwealth, and the governor is responding by setting up test sites where those occur. We certainly don't want to be one of them, so we just ask people to continue to be cautious. Just a reminder to everyone, we publish our formal number updates every Thursday afternoon, so those are full week updates, not single day updates. There's been no change, no additional deaths, which is a good sign. I haven't reported on this in over a month, and I'm thankful to get that update out to everyone. So all the other percentages remain the same, and the town buildings are open by appointment only, so please do not hesitate to reach out to whatever department you need to conduct business with and set up a meeting. That's the general update that I have for COVID-19 this evening.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions from board members? All right, then we can move on to item number 6, which is a joint meeting with the Police and Municipal Campus Building Committee, Tecton Architects, and CMS Inc. for an update on the Police and Municipal Campus Feasibility Study. Mr. Mizikar, would you like to introduce this item?
I would, thank you. And I will share my screen in one moment. I'll just take the opportunity to remind everyone that through the fiscal year 2020 capital improvement plan, town meeting authorized $250,000 for the commissioning of a feasibility study for the police station and 2 other buildings on the municipal campus, which of course are the town hall and the senior center. And through since that time, we've brought on a owner's project manager and CMS and an architect and Tecton Architects, and we've been working diligently with them both on a programming plan, which was the initial step with staff, and then of course the Board of Selectmen commissioned the building committee in May of this year to provide public oversight of this process. And I'm very pleased with the progress that we've made thus far. And it's been a pleasure to work with both CMS and Tecton and be guided by their skills and insight into projects. They certainly were selected because of their unique skill set with not only police stations, but municipal campus projects, and it's certainly providing benefits already. This evening, given some prior conversations with the Board of Selectmen, we will be focusing a discussion on the police station. And I would like to take the opportunity to just take a step back and remind everyone why why we've prioritized the police station in this project. So I will share my screen again and go over several bullet points with the board. So not only in working with this skilled design team and Chief Anderson and Chief Hester before he retired and other members of the department, it's very evident if you have the opportunity to walk through the police station to see that it has significant needs. But really the business argument goes much beyond aesthetics for this building. There's clear operational deficiencies and physical or structural deficiencies are the 2 driving points that require the replacement of this facility. Within the operational deficiencies, they're further broken out, at least in my opinion, on both procedural matters and personnel related matters. On the procedural side of things, there's often times where there's a lack of separation of prisoners and staff, and that obviously puts staff, sometimes civilian staff, in a very undesirable position as individuals are moved throughout the booking process or held or retained for whatever reason they're held or retained by the department. There's just insufficient space. there isn't a space for us to be able to provide significant training, even on a full shift basis at certain times. There isn't an opportunity to comfortably engage with the public, within a variety of settings, depending on why individuals may need the services of the police department. It simply doesn't exist. Our record storage area is primarily in the attic. And that's certainly not conducive with the current records retention laws and the fiduciary responsibility, or the oversight, responsibility that the town has in maintaining accurate records for court cases and other matters. Oftentimes, records could be required to be retained by the department for up to 3 decades, and certainly storing them in the attic isn't the preferred approach. We have one interview room that's kind of a cut through, doubles as sergeant office space. So if you see or can envision a modern police station that you may see on TV, where there's multiple ways to view an interview, whether it's by recording or in person through a safe distance, through a wall or a two-way mirror. We don't have anything even close to that within the department, and it really can impact our ability to gain the information that we need to properly and duly process individuals and protect them. There's inadequate space. The interview room, again, doubles as an office, lacks the audio video infrastructure. Booking room lacks audio video infrastructure, and oftentimes causes challenges whenever we go to court on some routine matters that really makes us look silly based upon the hard work and service that our officers put in, day out for the members of the community. On a personnel-related matters, there's 1 shower, 1 toilet, 1 urinal for 60 employees. So there's certainly very few occasions where we have 60 individuals in the building, but certainly over the course of the week, the vast majority, if not all of them, are in that building. We don't have any type of modern fitness opportunities for staff members to maintain their physical fitness and protect themselves and be able to respond to the community when needed. We barely have enough lockers for our department. Certainly the station hasn't grown as the department has grown over time, as you'll see in the presentation. 1 office, 2 computers, and 7 sergeants. So not only do we not have enough, computers for our sergeants, we don't really have a great deal of access for our other officers. Certainly mobile data terminals within the cruisers. Officers aren't in the cruisers 100% of the time. They need to be in the building and have access to IT infrastructure and technology. It should be seamless from the cruiser into the station environment when necessary. We don't have that opportunity right now. And certainly there's oftentimes whenever we need access to more computers as operations are ongoing throughout the course of the day. With regards to physical and structural deficiencies, the building, of course, fails to meet the Massachusetts Building Code. That's not a shocking comment. Just given the age of the building, it's not kept up to code. That's not something that any building really does. But it fails to meet safety standards for a police station. And some of those things that I've already mentioned, like a lack of separation for prisoners and staff, it just lacks modern protection for our dispatchers, our clerks, and there's really a lobby to maintain the public, and then the doors kind of swing open, and you can access a lot of civilian and officers, through a single door. So we have certainly many challenges to overcome. So, trying to be as concise as possible. There's procedural personnel and physical deficiencies that we need to overcome. This building certainly has provided a building's lifetime of support to the community, being originally constructed in 1972. I'll be pleased through the chair to turn it over to the design team to take you through what they've seen in a little more detail and provide further comments about their work on a new design to this point in the process.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mizikar. We'll turn it over to the team.
Thank you very much. My name's Matt Salad with Tecton Architects. Thank you for having us tonight to present our findings thus far. If you'll permit me, I'll share my screen at this time. And thanks, Mr. Mizikar, for getting us started. I think we'll be able to be a little bit more brief on some of the existing condition slides that we have here because you covered it so well. But as I said, I'm Matt Salad. I'm with Tecton Architects. This is our team. With me tonight is Jeff McElravy. He's a principal with Tecton Architects. And then Rebecca Hopkins and Justin Hopkins are both architects with our firm as well. Justin has been our expert in the programming of the town hall and the senior center and has been integral in the design of those two facilities that will be discussed at a later date. Our extended team for our civil engineer, we have Fuss & O'Neill. Consulting engineering services is our MEP fire protection consultant. O'Day is our structural engineer, and we are using A.M. Fogarty for cost estimating. Additionally, your owner's project manager, as Mr. Mizikar had identified, is construction monitoring services. I'd be happy to note that Neil and ourselves have completed successfully several police station projects over the past 5 years together. So we have a good working relationship, and you have a strong team working with your community on these projects. So I just want to go briefly over the scope of our feasibility study before we get into the police station itself. This being the municipal campus with the police station, town hall, and the senior center. And basically what we've been charged to do is assess the conditions of all three buildings as well as the site in its context and try to find what the deficiencies are and come up with solutions on how to resolve these issues moving forward. So we've analyzed the site, we've analyzed each building, we've met with key stakeholders in each department to get their insight on how the buildings have been useful or inefficient over their lifetime, and what their needs are really now and over the next 20, 30, 50 years to make sure that anything that we do in planning for the future is really captured so that in 10 years from now, we're not up against the wall and having to go back and renovate again. From there, we've developed conceptual design concepts for each building, floor plans, elevations, and 3D models for each building. Those have been reviewed by many of the departments, and we've gone back and made changes and as well with feedback from the building committee throughout this process. So we've gotten to a good place with all the plans, and I think they'll set up a good foundation moving forward for the rest of this study. From there, we developed a campus master plan. Anybody before COVID, anybody coming on site would be the first thing you'd notice is how full the parking lot is and how congested it can be navigating throughout the site. So trying to find ways to better organize the parking within on the site and the pedestrian circulation throughout the campus was a big point that we were making sure we incorporated. And then from there, we're going to take these conceptual designs into a schematic design, prepare a cost estimate, and that'll be the ultimate basis for appropriation at town meeting. So we wanted to look at, one of the big drivers of the growth of buildings and a municipal campus is of course tied to its census data and the population within that town. This shows the census data in population in a 10-year cycle, and what it basically shows is over a 10-year growth period, there's consistently approximately 7% growth in the town's population, and the building that the town has not kept up with that growth. So we've used this data in planning the size of the programs that we've developed. Additionally, staffing has grown along with those population metrics. So the two main points here is if you look at the data for town hall staff and the police staff over the past 30 years, there's been an average of almost 25% growth over a 10-year period for both of those facilities. So significant increase in staffing without a significant increase in building. So just to touch base on the existing police station conditions again, the building was constructed in the 1960s. It was renovated and added onto in the 90s. As Mr. Mizikar pointed out, it does not meet the structural requirements for a public safety facility or an emergency communications center with the 911 emergency call center. Those facilities are considered essential services, and because of that, they're what's considered a risk category 4 structure. And what that means is these buildings need to be constructed to a higher degree of strength than any other building that you would construct, because if there's ever a natural disaster or hurricane that moves through the town, these facilities need to remain operational when other buildings in the town have been damaged. Liquid space, the lobby is small, cramped, uninviting. There's a lot of things that happen in the lobby of a police station. You have people that are coming to file complaints and need to be meeting with officers in interview rooms. You have people that are registering who are sex offenders and other things like that. You have people that are registering for their gun permits. And in a small cramped space like this, you have a lot of those people that are going to be talking over each other and interacting, and you really want to have enough room and enough spaces where you can separate out those folks. Cramped office spaces. Again, the prisoner area, the image on the right is the prisoner processing area. This is where, when you are arrested, this is where you're booked, fingerprinted. This is where the breathalyzer is, and the intake process happens. It's an open space with that just isn't working efficiently. You're not able to make multiple bookings at a time. There's multiple times where the department will have multiple arrests, and with one booking station, they're not able to process them quickly. So you'll have a lot of overlapping folks that are going to be sitting here waiting to be booked into the cell area. The cells are outdated. Their hardware and the way they function don't meet the Mass Department of Public Health standards. And there's a lot of deficiencies with the way that they're operating now. Storage. Storage was mentioned as an issue. These are some photos of evidence storage and record storage throughout the facility. These are in a wood-framed attic. There's a lot of weight. The floor really can't support the load of all these files and paper storage. Additionally, evidence storage is critical in its security and its chain of custody when processing a case. If anything was to happen with any of this evidentiary material, you could lose a case or nullify it. And these materials need to be stored for 10, 20, 30 years, and some of them indefinitely in certain homicide cases. They're also in a partially conditioned attic. Part of it's not conditioned. So some of these sensitive materials are subject to damage just from the building temperature and humidity itself. So these are all things that need to be controlled and managed in a way that'll preserve these materials. And lockers, diversity in staff, the size of the staff, these weren't anticipated when the building was made. All of these things need to grow, and they're just cramped conditions. So also the dispatch center doesn't meet the NFPA 1221 current standards for an emergency communications center. So there's a lot of upgrades, and a lot of these spaces are within the core of the building and are hard to renovate and update. And so it becomes an inefficient cost proposal and slightly infeasible to say that we're going to renovate these to the current standards within the existing facility because of a lot of those constraints. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff, and he's going to give a brief overview on the programming effort and what the new station is going to be designed around.
So to program a building, we need to create a list of all of the spaces that go in the building and a little bit of information about the details of each of those spaces, so that when it goes on further in design, that you have all of those details available and you get all of those critical things that we talked about as deficiencies in your current station addressed in your new station. So we do this process by spending several days with your police department staff going through the interview process, and we talk about every single room in the building, and we we ask about all of the details that are necessary, whether it's got a security requirement, whether it has a special HVAC requirement, whether it has a confidentiality issue. We also bring our experience, having done an awful lot of these stations over the last 30 years, to help test ideas and see if there are other ways of approaching the problems that you face in your current facility. So that process, we go through and we create a space needs assessment, and that is a list of all of the rooms and their square footage. But then further, we go through and we create what's called our room detail sheet. And that once again lists all of those rooms and provides the detail that goes into making them functional and effective in a police facility. So for instance, that interview room that Kevin Mizikar spoke about, it will have appropriate audio video provisions. It'll also have acoustic control in there, because if you do a hard room and you don't put acoustic control in there, then all you get is echo on the recording. So all of these things need to be thought about, and they need to be included in the report. So after going through the process of a series of meetings, talking with the staff, we share all of the findings back. And I will just step back 1 second and say that during that process, we always challenge. Keith Anderson, I'm sure, can remember that there were a few times when I pushed him a little bit hard to make sure that we really understood what the need was, so that we got that right, making sure that we have a reason for everything we do in the program. So that's an important part of the process, is pushing a little and making sure that you get the right pushback where you need it. And if you don't get the pushback, maybe that's a want rather than need. So we feel pretty good about the end result here. All of this information was shared back with the police department so that they could review it and validate that the findings represented the things that they said to us. And then we shared that information with town staff. So the one last step in the process is, as we started looking at the very first conceptual design, we talked with the town staff about the need to maybe provide some additional meeting space. So off of the lobby in the police station, there are a couple meeting rooms that are available, not just for the police department, for the town to use as well. So you've got additional meeting space right off of that public lobby. And you've got all of the components that Matt talked about that makes the station effective. Matt? Oh, you weren't keeping up with me while I went? I put my glasses on, so I couldn't tell.
Okay, so that's a little bit about the programming process. We'll get into more detail about each room as we go through the floor plans, but this is sort of a snapshot of the campus master plan that we had developed. This area here is where the existing police station currently sits. And what we did is we were sort of constrained by, one, the size of the police station and the various functions that it needs. But currently, all of the police station staff, their cruiser vehicles are all mixed in with town administration in the town office staff parking. That really needs to be separated. So what we did is we created a separate drive for the police department staff, cruiser vehicle entry, and secure entry for when they're bringing a prisoner in to the police station itself. This allowed us to free up a lot of additional parking for the town offices. And then we also made some modifications to the parking area at the senior center, which would allow for a little bit easier flow of traffic. We moved some of the exterior assets to the front so that the exterior activity spaces for the senior center would be more connected with the rest of the campus. But really the primary focus being on the police station, it was really about gaining this rear parking space here to make sure that they have secure and safe parking for their cruisers and staff parking. Floor plan on the lower level, starting at the main entry, which is on axis with the front of the town hall. We have a larger lobby space than what you currently have here. These are the two public meeting spaces that Jeff had just mentioned. So not only are those an asset to the police department, but those will become an asset to the rest of the town, especially when the demand for additional meeting space is so critical to the town hall function as well. So these will be able to supplement some of that need. As you enter, there'll be the officer in charge here, the desk officer that'll basically guide you on where you need to go, or call anybody from the department that needs to come meet with you for whatever you need to do. To the south of the plan is the clerk's office. This is where you're going to make your records request. Unlike the existing station where the records are in the attic and the clerk would have to travel upstairs and grab whatever files is needed that are being requested, their record storage would be directly adjacent to their office. So it would reduce that travel time significantly and create a more efficient space. Currently, there's that one interview space that's a pass through to the rest of the facility. We now have 3 separate interview spaces for the public, one of which is a dedicated licensing room. So if you're going to get your pistol permit, that's where you would go and be fingerprinted and get your license. A new asset that would be created for the town is a 311 informational call center. This is a non-emergency call line. So that would be a new function that this department would have. This is the dispatch and emergency communications center. Directly behind that is the emergency communications equipment. So this is the server room for the facility. It's directly adjacent to the dispatch center. There's a lot of various standards and codes that require these to be directly adjacent. So creating that efficiency actually saves a lot of money if they were to be remotely located. The offices here are the traffic division. These are the offices for your patrol staff. They'll have a report writing area for when they're coming to file incident reports. Lieutenant offices are here. There'll be a roll call room. Right now you have a single small roll call training room space that seats about maybe 20 on a good day. You'll now have a community training room that has space for over 50 people. This will be not only used for police staff training, but can be used for other functions within the community. So this will be available to the public. You currently have about 5 parking spaces undercover in the garage to the back of the police station. So we'll be continuing that and getting the ability for about 8 cruisers undercover. So that way they're protected during inclement weather. You don't want officers going out into a snowstorm, cleaning off their cars and running across in an icy paved area if they need to hurry and respond to an emergency situation. They'll have a modern locker facility and fitness facility. This fitness facility is not just going to be weights and equipment like elliptical machines. This is also going to be used for tactical training as well as de-escalation training so that they're getting actual training to be for modern policing situations. This is critically important, especially what's going on politically now within the environment. So this will be a great asset for your police department. This blue area is the prisoner processing area. So if you recall on the site plan, the drive came around here. This is the Sally Port. This is where the cruisers who have detainees in them will come into the building. Doors will be closed. They'll be secured. Prisoner will be escorted into the prisoner processing area here. We have 2 processing desks. Like I said, there's times where there's multiple arrests being made, and it's more efficient to have 2 separate booking areas, so that way you can more effectively book those detainees. And then these are the cells for the prisoners. And then here is the evidence and evidence processing area. So as an officer brings somebody off the street and they have evidentiary material on them, they'll bring it into this evidence processing space. They'll bag it and tag it. And then it goes into this evidence pre-storage room, where from there, the evidence officer will be the only person that will have access to that material, again, for chain of custody and making sure that nobody else is able to tamper with that evidence. This is something that's very challenging for you to do in your department currently. On the second floor, we have a facility break area for the entire department. This area in the middle is the Detectives Bureau. So they have their detective staff here. Lieutenants will have their own offices with a conference area. They have their own records retention area. And then they also have 2 interview rooms with an observation space in between them. So when you see those interview rooms on TV, these are the interview rooms that you'll be looking at. So this gives the opportunity, one, for an officer to be interrogating a detainee, while somebody else is independently observing that interview. And at the same time, it's being video and audio recorded and being stored as evidence. They have their own locker room along with the police administrative staff. A lot of these, the administrative staff and the detectives don't work a typical shift hour. They might be at the station for a couple of days on end. So this gives them their own locker room so that they can maintain those long working hours. A couple of things you'll notice is we have a vestibule, one into the detective's office and another one into the department administration. Since COVID, we've started incorporating a number of ways that the building can better address pandemic response. And one of the biggest issues we've been finding is in departments like this, staff administration is having to work remotely away from the rest of their staff, and it's causing a disconnect between the chiefs, administrative, and the patrol officers. So this allows the public to come in or staff to come in, be checked in through the administration, the administrator, and then into the rest of the space as well. So it creates an airlock that would allow that separation. These are some of the elevations for the facility. We've gone back and forth with the building committee a number of times on the design of this, but really we are trying to capture a little bit of the essence of what the town hall has, but with a little bit of a more modern aesthetic. This being the main entry here, we've recessed it so that you'll be coming in undercover. We'll be matching the brick to the town hall now so that there's a consistent feel throughout the campus with a stone water table. You'll notice that a lot of the windows on the lower level are raised up. That's for the security of the staff that are working within the police department itself in case anybody wishes to do any of the staff or officers harm. We've raised those windows up so that they'll be protected. This is the south elevation. This would be the clerk's office behind here. These are the traffic and patrol offices behind as well. The west elevation, this is where those the garages would be. Off behind here is the Sally Port. And then this is the north elevation. So this would be the fitness area. And then this is the rear end of the prisoner processing area and the break room above. We just did a simple massing diagram to sort of give a feel of how these compare to the town hall and to the senior center. You can see we're sort of carrying across the eve line of town hall. It's a relatively flat site, so the grade will be similar at the finished floor level. So we wanted to carry that eve line across, but we sort of wanted to reduce this roof line so that it was subservient to the town hall, and that when you came onto the campus, that was what really grabbed your attention. And then the police station front elevation would then frame the rest of the campus so that it really felt cohesive throughout. And then really quickly, just a front rendering of the front entry, looking from the town hall down the drive. And it's pretty much all we have. So if there's any comments or questions, we'd be happy to address them. So a lot of information, I know.
Madam Chairman?
Sorry, I just called back in. I have no
Okay.
internet. So I'm assuming that the
Okay.
presentation ended.
Yes.
And I wanted to just take a moment to recognize that we have the building committee with us this evening. And now that I can't,
Hello?
Jim, we're still here, but I'm wondering if maybe it makes sense for Vice Chair LeBeau to pick up.
Yep.
I'm just about to do that. So while we're waiting for the
Thank you.
chairman to.
I think I'm okay. Can you guys
okay,
hear
welcome
me?
back. Shoot.
I'm
Nothing
really
like the-
I'm very sorry. Okay.
Please, Madam Chairman, take right back.
I
the chair.
apologize. When you're next talking to the GM of Selco, you can let him know that my house needs attention. I would like to just take a moment to thank the building committee and recognize that they are on this meeting this evening, and that would be the chairman, Patrick Pitney, the vice chairman, Selectman Mo DiPaolo, also Chief of Police Kevin Anderson, Assistant Superintendents for Finance and Operations Patrick Collins, our Building Superintendent Keith Baldinger, and then I think not on the call this evening are Holly Luck from the Council on Aging, she's the director, and also Assistant Town Manager Kristen Lass. I think that our resident members, Mr. Joe Morrow, and I know that I'm missing Justine Snyder. I think she's also on the call. And have I missed anyone else? I'm very sorry if I did. All right, I think I have everyone. So I just want to thank you all for the time and attention that you're putting into this building committee, and also thank the architects and the project manager for the presentation. It was very thorough. And then I'd like to open it up for comments or questions from the board.
Madam Chairman,
Mr. Kane.
I'm wondering if through you, the architectural team could discuss how they're dealing with the top issues of officer safety that may be present in the current building that they seek to reduce or eliminate in a future building.
Jeff, you want to take this one?
Yeah, if I was not muted, you'd hear a lot of good stuff already. I apologize. Yes, there's a lot of different things that we do in a police station to address officer safety and security, especially in these the times of a pandemic. So I'm going to start right there. The air handling systems that we're using these days, more often than not, are a VRF system, and we do the air exchange through a core rather than a wheel, so that we transfer far less recirculated air, thus keeping the air much cleaner inside the station. There are also zones in the station where we isolate the airflow, i.e. the dispatch center has isolated HVAC systems so that we don't mix the air between the public spaces or any other area of the building, because we wouldn't want the introduction of a smoke or anything else to take down your emergency dispatch facility. There's also a lot of very simple things that we do in terms of security. You notice there's some low planter walls that are suggested out in front there. That helps prevent people from storming the building with a vehicle. Ultimately, there'll be some bollards and some other landscape features along the entry so that it's not possible there. The higher windows that Matt mentioned in some areas, that takes away any line of sight and makes safety inside the building much improved. The other thing is, I think that when you think about real officer safety, making sure that you are well trained and that you're physically fit are important aspects of the job. So having appropriate training space inside the facility, there's a lot of very good training going on these days. I've been a member of the Community Policing Committee of the International Chiefs of Police for 20 years, and I can tell you there's lots of good information there that I think is very appropriate to the times that we're in. And we just got to get that training out to a lot of departments who are doing good work. And then the other one that I think that was brought up by Mr. Mizikar as well as Matt Salad is the isolation of the prisoner processing area. One of the biggest risks, well, I'm going to tell you, there's two big areas where we get employee injury complaints in a police station. The two prime areas are the dispatch center, and that usually has to do with stress or repetitive motion syndrome because that is a very stressful job. And then the prisoner processing area, because once you've brought somebody in, they were out living their life just a few minutes ago, and all of a sudden they're in a very real situation. And unfortunately, there is a tendency to be disruptive and not cooperative. Making sure that once you bring a prisoner into that area, that they do not have access to anywhere else in the facility. They're contained so that no member of the public visiting the station or no officer will get surprised by a detainee who's fleeing the detention area. They're secured inside that area of the building right up until the time that they're ready for release.
Madam
Additionally,
Chairman?
Go ahead, Mr. Kane. Do you have a follow-up?
No, I was just going to thank him for a very thorough, thoughtful approach to much more concerning officer safety than I originally considered when asking my question. So thank you very much.
my pleasure.
Any other questions from the board? I don't see anyone, so I have one that I would like to ask just about handicap accessibility in the building. If someone could speak a little bit to that. I think from watching one of your building committee meetings, there is no elevator. So I don't know who can answer that question.
Mr. Salad, I
Yeah,
believe.
I'll take this one, Jeff. So there is an elevator. We've actually discussed with the building committee, and part of it had to go back to the senior center, but it applies to any project that we do, and that's that the ADA and the Massachusetts Access Board, those are just the base minimum requirements, and we'll meet all of those standards in the new facility. But we'll go above and beyond that with this building and understanding the way that each space is going to be used and who's going to be using them. You know, it's one thing to put a push button on a door so that it automatically opens, but it's another thing to understand that there's other types of disabilities that really need to be accounted for. You know, it's auditory disabilities in the training rooms, making sure that somebody who's hearing impaired is adequately taken care of with auditory listening devices and things like that. But at the same time, there's also ADA accessibility concerns with detainees. So we do need to provide a handicapped accessible cell. But one of the things that you run into with that concern is if you have grab bars like you would in a normal restroom for somebody that's wheelchair bound, you know, now at the same time, you're creating a risk for something that they can tie a ligature to and do self-harm. So these are all the sort of considerations that we have when we're thinking about the accessibility of the station itself. And I think that addressed it. But yes, in short, there is an elevator in the building.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'm not seeing anything.
Well,
Mr. DiPaolo.
if you were just at the point of starting to wrap this up, I would just say, first of all, and primarily that this station is sorely needed. When we put the addition on around 1998, we knew that was a Band-Aid to hold us for, you know, probably about 10 years. That the current station does not lend itself to renovation because of original construction and issues like that. And now with seismic codes and all the changes in the code for public safety buildings. But the heating and air conditioning in there is really tough. But more importantly, the organization has outgrown the needs or the functions of the police department have outgrown the functionality of the building. So, you know, we've been putting this on the back burner for several years because of other projects that came up, excuse me, that may have gotten advanced a little more quickly because that's when the grants came up and you had to go when the grants came up or you would lose the grants. So that this is something that really needs to be done. And I think there's been a lot of thought already been put into this because this work had started actually before the committee was formed. And I think it resulted in very few questions as we got into the stage.
Madam Chairman, are we losing him?
Uh, I'm not hearing you, so.
Okay, I hear you now, Mo.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's my fault.
I won't repeat everything. I'll just close by saying this station is sorely needed. The current station has long grown out. The organization has outgrown the capabilities of the facility, and the longer we put this off, the more it's going to cost, and the more I think it compromises the ability of the police department to actually work efficiently in the building. So I just leave it at that. I don't know what you missed, if you missed anything, but I just leave it at that for now.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right, thank you for the very thorough presentation. I definitely appreciate that, and I look forward to watching the project progress.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to item number 7 on the agenda, which is a 7 to 15 meeting with Jason Molina, lead petitioner, regarding Article 30 of the August 8th, 2020 annual town meeting warrant. Jason's going to provide a short presentation.
Good evening, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, well, name is Jason Molina, and I'm joined tonight with Melanie McGee, who's on video, and Paul Schwab, who's on the call, representing the Community Preservation Shrewsbury Ballot Committee. So I'm just going to go ahead and launch my present screen. Come on. And please let me know if you can see the screen. Are you able to see it?
Yes, we can see it, Jason.
Okay, thank you. All right. So I know that our ballot committee has spoken before the Board of Selectmen previously, so I'll keep my remarks as quickly as possible, but I did want to at least show you what the presentation will look like at the annual town meeting, so it is brief and short. So just to reintroduce CPA for the benefit of folks who are watching online, CPA is a Community Preservation Act, allows communities who adopt it to establish funds dedicated for recreation, open space, historic preservation, and affordable housing. Adopting CPA with a local funding of 1% on the real estate tax bill is what we're proposing, and also including the allowable exemptions, which I'll explain in the next few slides. And our position is that we believe that we should let the voters decide whether they can support it, along with other questions that come before them. And lastly, if the community decides that from 5 years from now, if they want to revoke CPA, or if they want to make adjustments even sooner than that, that they could seek a town meeting question and then a ballot referendum to make those adjustments or revocation. Just want to make a note that a number of communities that have adopted CPA have made adjustments up or down on their charges, but none have sought a revocation that was successful. So that's good news to hear. With CPA, we have a number of opportunities that folks have asked for over time, and I'll just cover a few of those. On the recreation side, on the top left, we know that there's a need for rehabilitation of overdue school and neighborhood playgrounds, including to make them ADA compliant. We are aware of the need for rehabilitating softball, baseball, and lacrosse fields, including adding irrigation, shade shelters, and lighting. Some folks have asked for a dog park to be created, and others have also asked for additional walking and bike trails, especially where we can unify them across lands. On the open space front, we already pay for invasive weed control on our ponds and lakes. There's an opportunity to use CPA funds, thereby freeing up some monies on the municipal side for other sorely needed things. On the historic preservation side, we could preserve qualifying historic buildings and artifacts, restore historic gravestones so we can see are in bad need of repair in town, and then also preserve and digitize historic town records. before they're lost to time. And on the affordable housing front, we would have the opportunity for creating low-income senior or veteran housing, and also acquiring and repurposing historic structures as they become available for affordable housing needs. And then the point here also with affordable housing is that we can finally start making some progress towards chipping away at our not being able to be at the 10% mark for 40B thresholds. So in general, CPA can fund these activities as you see on screen with check marks. Left-hand side are the action verbs that are allowed through the legislation: acquiring, creating, preserving, supporting, or rehabilitation and restoration, along the categories that I spoke about: open space, recreation, historic preservation, and affordable housing. So CPA is not new. It's been around since 2000, and 177 communities have adopted it, which is over 50% of Massachusetts. And just to name a few, these comparable towns like Grafton, Holliston, Medway, and Northborough have adopted it. And just to also note that we have a number of communities that advanced a ballot question for this November, namely Framingham, Franklin, Greenfield, Lancaster, and as of earlier today, Whitman. So 5 communities are now going to be asking for, and hopefully we will be the additional community to do so. So in terms of how CPA is funded, again, we would be looking for the 1% surcharge, which will be part of the local funding. And then by doing so, by adopting CPA, we would unlock matching state funds. There is a statewide community trust fund that pays out to communities that adopt CPA. And whether we adopt CPA or not, we have already been paying into that state trust fund through transactions at the Registry of Deeds without getting any of the benefits. And we're hoping that through adopting CPA, we know we would get monies from that trust fund. And in terms of dollars and cents, how would it affect the taxpayers? On screen here, you can see the sample real estate property values. And right there in the middle is the average single family property value coming out at $478,603 based on last year's. And there's an exemption that we would also be including for residential, industrial, and commercial properties. So for the purposes of calculating the surcharge, to reduce that valuation by $100,000. So effectively, that means that that average single family property value would be assessed a $47.21 surcharge for the year, or in other words, $12 for the quarter. There are exemptions. So for those folks that do want to apply, low-income property owners and low to moderate income seniors, if they qualify based on these income limits and that are adjusted yearly, and again that they apply, could seek to not have to pay any of the surcharge. And then anybody who has an existing tax exemption, those are not impacted. Regarding the revenues in total from CPA, that 1% surcharge is estimated to generate over $500,000 annually. And then when you combine that with the annual variable match from the state, that will equal the pool that we will be looking for available to fund CPA projects in Shrewsbury. And again, opting in by adopting CPA will enable Shrewsbury to receive that distribution from the state. And so speaking about those state funds, we are missing out on a lot, and other communities have, when they adopted early, and as time progresses, we can see some significant dollars coming in just for adopting CPA. So if we look at from left to right, we can see starting with Norwood, that is, and going down to Grafton, the timeline going to the past that they've been in for a very long time, and towns like Northborough, $2.3 million was received from the state. Grafton, $2.1 million. Now, if Shrewsbury had already adopted CPA in the past, last year's, only looking at last year's distribution would have been potentially $115,000. And of course, the longer we would stay in it, the longer we would be accumulating funds from the state. In terms of what we would do that money in and how projects would be approved, the community groups, residents, and town departments, just to name broad categories, those folks would raise project proposals, and they would be submitting them to a new committee named the Community Preservation Committee, or CPC. And the charge of that committee is to look at those projects to make sure that they fall in line with the allowable use table that I showed earlier, and that there's funds available to fund the request. And certainly, if the funds aren't available for those particular requests, then CPA monies can be bonded so that you can get to larger requests. And then those project requests that have been looked at by CPC would then be advanced to town meeting as the governing body for the approval of allocating funds to those budget line items or to the projects that were requested. And just a comment about who is on that Community Preservation Committee, it would be a proposed 9-member board, and there's statutory requirements to have 1 member each from the Conservation Commission, Planning Board, Historic Commission, Housing Authority, and Parks and Cemetery Commission. And through our proposal, we would be looking to have 4 additional members added to it. The bylaw that would establish a CPC would be raised after town meeting, if they approve it, and the ballot referendum in November. So we would be looking to raise that bylaw in earnest and solicit feedback from all members that will be looking to influence that creation. And so in conclusion, it is our position that we were looking for for folks to vote yes for the Communities Preservation Act. Again, CPA was enacted in 2000 and continues to pay out year over year. CPA enables us to follow through on strategic plans and community-sourced priorities, namely the open space and recreation plans and surveys that have been conducted in the past and recently. The master plans of 2001 and 2016 have called out elements of CPA or inferred the need for the things that CPA can address, and housing production plans have explicitly called adopting CPA to be looked at for addressing those plans. CPA would, if approved, would come into effect on July 1st, 2021, as stated in the motion that we would be reviewing at town meeting. And so finally, your yes vote in the course as a Board of Selectmen, I'm hoping as a recommendation to move forward to allow the voters to decide if Shrewsbury should adopt CPA on November 3rd. And I want to thank you for your time to look at CPA once more.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
For the presentation and for keeping it to 10 minutes as was requested. I appreciate that. We have a very full agenda. And also, board members, you'll recall that we did spend some time in March discussing this with Mr. Molina and I believe Mrs. McGee. And if there's any questions from the board for Mr. Molina on his petition article. I have one. Oh, Mr. Samia, were you looking to unmute?
Yes, I have one quick question. Just on
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, just on the state funds. I know 2002 through 2007, the state matched 100%, and they've fallen dramatically since then. Do you know where we're looking at for 21 and what the maximum amount would be in light of the new fees that the state enacted at the beginning of this year, I believe? What's the maximum amount of match we'd expect to see?
Sure, thank you for the question. So I will say that last year, after they raised, after they injected some extra surplus monies into the fund, communities, if we had adopted, communities that were under the 3% surcharge received a 23.9% payout as their first round payment. Not to get too technical, but as 3 rounds of payments, we would be only qualifying for 1 under our proposal. For this year, given the extraordinary nature of COVID-19, the Department of Revenue has posted a projection based in May, and of course that's May, right, really early on. They're looking at 11.2% payout. If you recall, the state trust fund is based on transactions at the Registry of Deeds. So if you see a lot more uptake on those transactions, where each one of those transactions is going to add money to the pot. So my personal opinion, I don't work for the Department of Revenue, but I believe that we'll probably see a higher number than 11%. It was projected based on the news articles that were leading up to, the increase of before COVID, that we will probably be in that 20%-ish range. So again, that's not a guarantee. It really is propping up the trust fund so that as more communities get on, there is equitability, right? So that folks that said yes get into CPA, that they're getting something back for the monies that they put into it. Does that answer, is that okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? That was my question as well. I was just wondering, in light of the current situation with COVID-19, what sort of distribution we could expect from the state. And so if there's no further questions or comments from board members, I think that we made our position pretty clear in March, that we feel strongly as a board that we need to be supportive of only one initiative that would be asking taxpayers to pay a bit more each year, and that we were going to look more closely at the police station, and that you would had then agreed to bring it to town meeting as a petition article, which I know that you're planning to do. And so we will see what the town meeting decides at our meeting on August 8th. And thank you for the presentation and for your efforts.
Thank you very much.
Board members, that brings us to item number 8, which is a meeting with Bernie Cahill, town planner, regarding articles 31, 32, 33, 34, and 35 of the August 8th, 2020 annual town meeting warrant. Mr. Cahill.
Hi, thank you. I'd like to thank the chair and the board for the opportunity this evening to speak. Let me please open up the presentation and get it going here. Always takes a second. If it does come up, here we go. Sorry, it's a bigger file. All right, Ms. Cassidy, can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, good, thank you. Great, so I'm gonna keep this pretty short. First of all, like I said, thank you very much again for having me back. This is my third presentation to the Board of Selectmen regarding this topic. And I'm going to keep it as brief as I possibly can, much briefer than the last 2 meetings we've had together. So what I'm going to do is pretty much give a very brief overview of how we got here today and how we got to 4 articles. And I'm going to go over some of the articles and then address preemptively some of the questions I think you town meeting members and residents might have about what it is the town center zoning articles are doing. So to start with, the proposal for the new town center zoning district really has its origins going all the way back to the 2016 Shrewsbury Master Plan. So the master plan really established several goals for strengthening and preserving Shrewsbury's town center in order to maintain and enhance the character of Shrewsbury's town center by promoting appropriate development and redevelopment. And here we can see at the top, there's 2 more kind of more specific goals to that, and that's ensuring pretty much that the future infill of the town center is complementary to the compact style of the area. That was one of the master plan's goals for the town center. The other was to look at and consider the town and promote the town center as a pedestrian-friendly shopping area and a neighborhood gathering place. And to achieve those goals, the master plan also laid out some very specific tasks, as it did for all sections of the town in all different areas. These tasks for the town center were given over to or prescribed to the planning department, planning and economic development department to try to fulfill. One of those, of course, was to conduct a design study and develop a clear vision for the town center area, determine the limits of that town center, make recommendations for things like parking, design guidelines, streetscapes, and wayfinding. And finally, to consider developing a business association and or independent organization that promotes the economic and cultural well-being of the town center. So I'm very happy to tell you that the planning department either completed or aided in the completion of all of those tasks that were set out before us back in 2016. For many of these tasks, the planning department applied for and received state grants, which really helped us to hire consultants, as you can see on this slide in particular. The parking study was done in 2018. And I think one of the ones that we've been most happy with, I mean, all of them we've been quite happy with, but helping to establish the Shrewsbury Town Center Association, which held a really successful Yuletide market and lighting of the common last December in 2019. There's some really great and active residents on that, and I encourage people to check them out and get active on it. The next one was we were awarded a grant to conduct a visioning study, not only for the town center as a whole, but for the Beal School in particular. And that kind of also gave us some guides for, for design guidelines and ideas for that kind of thing. I don't want to get into too many specifics on each of these. And of course, the planning board helped weigh in and helped to craft the Beal School property recommendations by providing professional guidance to the Beal Reuse Committee. And as this board is very well aware from last month, the wayfinding and branding study was just completed. So as you know, because you are a central part of it, following all of these studies, culminating in last August, was the planning department began to draft an outline for the town center and what it might look like and what it might contain. And we brought this overview to you, the Board of Selectmen, in October, and with your encouragement and support, we moved forward with 2 public forums in November and December, really well attended, and also a meeting with town center stakeholders, including the Shrewsbury Town Center Association, which I just mentioned, as well as the Historic District Commission. So we used those opportunities to get a lot of feedback, good and bad criticism. We took it all on board, and then we brought that the findings from those back to you in February, right before the whole COVID thing started. And that was our last meeting with you. And then we brought the first draft. We started to write the draft and actually the language itself based on our conversations with the Board of Selectmen, based on the public feedback we were getting. And we held our last in-person meeting with the planning board to go over the draft of the town center language in March. Since then, the planning board's been holding public hearings every month, and we've just left them open. It's been an additional time for us to review this language, so it's been really good. We've used it well. And we're here today now with the Board of Selectmen public hearings, the last presentation that we're going to be doing before town meeting. As the chair mentioned earlier, I did make a presentation as part of the town meeting presentation, so I encourage town meeting members in particular to take a look at those presentations. And I speak to all of the articles, including Article 35. So please take a look at that for a more in-depth discussion of this. So while we were talking to everyone during the last, really from September to February, what we realized is that we started talking in terms of 4 distinct sections of what we were doing. So we broke those and ended up breaking those down into 4 distinct articles because that's how we were presenting this anyways to people. And we realized, why change it? Let's just keep going with how we're presenting it. It seems to be effective. So Article 1, as you can see, deals with new uses and definitions. Number 2 is going to talk, Article 32 is going to talk more about incorporating what we've done into the existing zoning and how it's going to fit into existing zoning. Article 33 is the actual creation of the subsection that creates the town center district, much like we have overlay districts and so on in town. And then finally, Article 34 is going to show the boundaries. So I'm not going through every new use and every definition. That is going to have to be done by town meeting members and yourselves. But I just wanted to point out a few of the samples, some of the highlights that get me very excited and I think is really great for the town center. The first one is a vertical mixed use, which is simply a use that is vertical, so more than 1 floor. You can look at the dimensions to see what we're doing. We're currently saying 2.5 stories by right, 3 stories by special permit only. For a mixed use, simply what it means is that, so more than 1 story, the second story could have either a different use than the first story. So you might have retail on the first story and then the first floor and then something like commercial on the second, or you could have residential units. What triggers the special permit is if there's a vertical mixed use and the applicant is asking for more than 8 residential units. So anything under 8 residential units, it would still trigger a site plan requirement before the planning board, but it wouldn't be until you get to that 9th unit that would then trigger a special permit requirement as well, which gives the planning board a lot more review in the town, a bit more of a say in that. We actually have something, as you can see in this picture, it might look similar to the Amici's building that we have in town, kind of the 2-story, and that has 6 apartments going into it. So if that were going in brand new, it would only require that site plan and not the special permit. Horizontal mixed use is exactly what it sounds like, things built on the horizontal plane on one lot. So you might have one use in front and a different use in the back, but on the same lot. That's always going to be requiring a special permit, and because we're trying to discourage that kind of use in this particular part of town to kind of create that typical New England village feel. And by popular demand, nano and microbreweries were brought up. We've created some definitions for them and put them on the use table. The microbrewery, which creates more barrels of product every year, would trigger a special permit simply because we felt a little extra oversight was needed because of the water use and something like that. But nano breweries would require site plan only. So just to give you a flavor of things that we're proposing in this article. So then finally, one of my favorites is, of course, the small scale or boutique hotel. If you're very familiar with some of the smaller, maybe slightly more northern New England, maybe towns and New England town centers and villages, village centers, you get these kind of small scale, not more than 50 room hotels. They can be quite unique and quite interesting. And this would require site plan approval. So there's plenty more, and I encourage everyone to take a look, especially town meeting members. And then this one is also part of Article 31. We, of course, had to go through the existing use table. And as you can see in the middle is the town center district. And we had to put in all the new uses as well. So I'm not going to go through all of them. It's a very long document, the whole use table. But please do check it out. But that is just what it looks like as we go through and add these new uses. So Article 32 is, as I mentioned earlier, it's dealing with the integration of the town center and some of the unique uses and standards that will be there. So, so when we create a new district like this, right, we have to go through the zoning and figure out a way to incorporate the new things that we're introducing. And where the existing zoning doesn't apply, we have to put in language that says, please refer to the new sub-district that we're creating. And you can see that in the center use, right? So all other signage in the town center district shall be governed by the signage standards and guidelines in section 7U and so on. So where the current zoning doesn't apply and where there's special regulations for the town center, you'll have a reference to the town center section where you'll see we do have standards for. And then again, on the right-hand side, as I mentioned earlier, we, of course, the trigger for site plan, as we have for many uses already that trigger site plan approval, we have stuck in the any horizontal or vertical mixed use. So that one was that, Article 32. Now, Article 33 is the one that, as I mentioned, would establish a new standalone town center subsection. And I don't have it here, but we have about a page and a half of laying out the overall vision of the town that the town has for the town center, the whole everything I've been speaking about wanting it to be a cohesive unit, about wanting it to be a traditional town center village for New England. And also the criteria, and most importantly, the criteria the planning board would use when evaluating a proposed development. So that's all in this section. And this is followed by the section I'm showing you here today on this slide, which is those specific standards and requirements that need to be met for development in the town center. So if someone comes forward with a new plan, they're going to have to meet certain things like setbacks, lot coverages, but also, as importantly, I think maybe the most important thing is design and architecture standards and things like parking areas, pedestrian areas, and how they're going to interact with the new buildings, with the existing infrastructure that we have. So that's kind of, and what we've done here too, and this is unique somewhat to Shrewsbury zone, and I think we only have one other image right now, is we've used a lot of images, we've used a lot of visuals to really get an idea of the flavor for what is it that Shrewsbury is looking for in their town center, and to really get that feel across. So even if the language is beyond some of the board members or residents as something's coming forward, we can look and say, that's what we want. That's kind of what we're looking for. And Article 34 is, as I think is pretty obvious, is the proposed boundaries for the new zoning district. Unlike the current limited business district, which is there now, this one, the way we've changed it is that we wouldn't see the zoning boundary go through lots of land. So if you look carefully at where limited business is now, it cuts through so much as like 5/8 of a lot. So there's like a tiny bit left in a different district. I don't like that as a planner. I don't like it anywhere in town. But it happens, and here's a chance to really clean it up and make a cohesive town center boundary. And also what we did is you'll see, of course, that there's some expansion to the east of Main Street. What we did, and we had this presentation at the public forum, is there are actually quite a few existing mixed use and commercial businesses down the eastern part of Main Street that exist today, but exist in a residential district. So we thought it makes sense culturally and cohesively, as the master plan alluded to, is to define that town center. So we said, well, let's take a look at adding this to the town center zoning district. And that's exactly what we did. And then finally, I wanted to just address these issues because we've gotten these questions a lot over the last 12 months or so, especially since the Beal Reuse Committee really got going. So the question I think on a lot of people's mind is, well, how would the town center zoning, right, impact the development at Beal School? A request for proposal is being formulated by the town and is going to go out to developers to provide the town with their idea for what could go there. But when they do that, what this is going to do is going to provide the developer, right, with a vision that Shrewsbury already has for the area. So hopefully when they come forward, they're going to say, they're going to look at those criteria I was talking about and that vision in that subsection, if this gets approved. And they're going to say, okay, this is the vision the town has for it. If we're going to get this through, if we're going to get this approved by Board of Selectmen and get support from the public, we know what we need to do. We know the look and the feel that they're going for. And it also establishes the zoning process that they would have to go through were their project to be approved by the board. So if there was some sort of redevelopment at the Beal site, the site plan triggers, the design, the parking, those would all have to meet the town center zoning district standards, which provide for things like architecture and all those good things. But also, I also think this is the most important point of all, is that the zoning can be amended, right? It's not necessarily in stone. So if there is a proposal that comes in that the town really, really likes, and for some reason it's just not going to meet one of the zoning components of the town center, we can always adjust it. We did this for the Market Basket project down on Route 20 that's moving along. We did this for Lakeway Commons when it came in about 5 years ago. So it's been done before, and it can take some time, but it's not necessarily so onerous that we can't get it done. And I think we could all agree that if there's a project that really comes forward, we're all in support of, I think we could see it making it happen. So the other concerns that we heard in the last 12 months were things like, would an existing landowner have to make their buildings conform? And the short answer is no. A new zoning anywhere in town doesn't require anyone to immediately conform, right? It really only impacts new development, or if the existing landowner decides to do a major renovation, or even then, it's usually a special permit by the Zoning Board of Appeals for an existing non-conforming use or building. However, for the most part, it's really just new development. And I see it's not so much as a restriction on existing owners, but rather an opportunity for existing owners and an opportunity for future owners, right? It opens a lot more doors and windows for existing landowners and future landowners to do different things than they might otherwise do. And I think that's a great opportunity for them. And I think it would be good for the town. But again, it doesn't mean anyone has to shut up shop, right? Dunkin' Donuts, as I keep telling everyone, does not need to close if this passes. It will be there. The gas stations can stay. It just means no new gas stations would come in. So how quickly can the town expect to see changes? I've got a lot of pressure from people to say, well, we want this sooner rather than later. Unfortunately, zoning doesn't make change happen. It provides the opportunity for change to happen, right? It's still going to require landowners, imaginative developers, skilled architects and builders, and all the like. So it will come. I think the Beal opportunity, the fact it's happening right now, if this were to pass in conjunction with that, is a huge opportunity, one that not every town gets. And to have that at the same time as this to go hand in hand, I think is phenomenal. And I think it could be really something special. So yeah, I would turn it back over to you, Madam Chair, and any questions that any of you might have.
Thank you for that presentation and for taking us through what we could possibly expect to see at some point in the town center if these articles get approved. Board members, any questions or comments? I know we've seen this a few times.
Madam Chairman?
Mr. Kane.
Bernie, thank you very much for all the work. I'm very supportive of what you're seeking to achieve and what the folks involved, I know Mo has been deeply involved, are seeking to achieve. One of the issues that people need in order to invest money, though, is some degree of certainty. So as you look at these various changes, how many are as of right changes? So I know for certain, as long as I fit in this box, I'm going to get approved. I don't need a specific number, but overall, some guesstimate on your part, a half, 2/3, 1/4.
I would say just over half require a special permit, and the rest are site plan only. We were looking at the uses that would require special permits to be those with the greatest potential negative impact and those which would like to have the most say over. So things like a large scale hotel is not prohibited from the town center. It would just require a special permit, whereas a small scale hotel under 50 rooms requires just the site plan, right? Because a large scale hotel could go off the rails, were it to get out of hand in terms of size and how many lots it was taking up, et cetera. So I think having that as a special permit would make sense. We tried really hard to keep it that way. But yeah, I think estimate, I'd say just over 50% probably special permit and the rest by site plan approval.
Okay, what flexibility are you offering in these drafts relative to parking and the realities of those are smaller lots in the center of town? So not everything will fit perfectly as if you had a large field. So what levels of flexibility are you offering where you're going to make someone go through perhaps a special permit process and the vagaries that go into that? How are you then countering it with some degree of flexibility?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I actually remembered, Selectman Kane, that you brought this up last October, and it's been on my mind ever since. So what we did is we've kind of turned the traditional model for parking on its head. Typically, the town prescribes, right, X number of parking spaces per 1,000 square feet of commercial or retail. What we've done here is we've done two things. The first is that we are requiring the applicant to provide us with a parking plan rather than us prescribing to them what the parking is going to be. Now, the second part of that is that we are also allowing for, not with a special permit, none of this is with a special permit, for off-site parking and for shared parking to make it even easier, or I should say easier. I don't think it's easy right now, but to give them a formal way to submit shared parking plans and off-site parking. Right now, we don't have anything for that in town, so this would be unique to this section to formalize it for the town center district. So the idea is ultimate flexibility with that. They do still have to provide that parking plan, but it's not us telling them what will work. They're telling us, what is the market telling them that will work? What's going to work? Because they need that parking to function for their businesses or their residents to thrive. So it puts the onus on them to show us that it will work. So we have off-site parking. I believe it's within 500, 800 feet of a site for off-site parking. Shared parking agreements would be allowed by right, but they'd have to show it to us. So if you're sharing with your neighbor, you just need to present us with the plan, but there's no special permit involved. So we've kind of stood it on its head. And then also, I know you asked me this 9 months ago as well about things like setbacks and buffers. And I've talked about it, and I have this on good advice. Under the rubric of the special permit, when someone does come forward, the board will have ultimate flexibility to, under their criteria for what's best for the town and the town center, be able to waive the 10-foot buffers in the back. And I remember you said, could you negotiate for, if you get a larger front sidewalk, could you get a little smaller setback in the back? And the answer is yes, absolutely, you could.
All right, that's great. I greatly appreciate you moving away from the traditional zoning statist approach that if it's not in the bylaw, it can't possibly be good for the town, and actually establishing a dialogue back and forth by those who regulate versus those who actually create. So thank you very much. The one final comment, Madam Chairman, is that the first, if this is approved by town meeting, the first project is always the most difficult and the critical project, because if the first one occurs, people will buy into it in the market. So I would simply ask the Bernie and of course the manager to ensure that any other element regarding inspectional services is in early on any project that may come forward, because ultimately that's where the rubber hits the road, and that's where the experience that the town affords someone is so critically important and sets the tone for other people being willing to not only make the leap in town, but make the specific leap in the investment within the center of town. So thank you very much. And I'd appreciate post town meeting if we could sit down to get something a little more specific on how we're going to make sure the inspectional services component is completely woven in from the get-go. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that, and I think that's why the Beale School project, whatever may come of it for the RFP, is going to be so important, because it's going to be the principal. It could be the principal driving factor in the town center, and if it is the first one forward, we're going to have to take, as much extra time as we need to make sure we get it right, and sit down with them and make sure we sit down with staff ahead of time to make sure the process is as smooth as possible.
You make an interesting observation, because if we own the property and we've recommended the zoning and town meeting approves the zoning, we have no wiggle room to screw up, because we're basically our own property and our own zoning. So I appreciate the observation, and thank you, Madam Chairman.
Correct. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Madam Chairman,
Mr. DiPaolo?
I just wanted to compliment Mr. Cahill on all the work he did on these articles in the town center rezoning. I think there was a good amount of public participation in this process. I think it's more successful than they've been in the past, in terms of the number of opportunities, but also the number of people who came to participate. And a lot of their comments were incorporated into these final zoning articles, which is, again, when governments take public comment into account and actually implement some of those ideas, it gives residents a sense that they're heard and that they're part of the community, and it's not just the town government telling them what to do. So I think it's been a really good process. I'm hoping that these things go through town meeting. I can tell you there's a lot of excitement on the Town Center Association's part about this, and I know, at least anecdotally, of some people that are already starting to think about development in the center and what this new zoning could mean. So I think we have the potential to be off to a good start, and I do agree that the Beale project is going to be, I think it's going to be key to this. There might be other smaller projects that come up before the proposal gets approved, but I think it's going to be key. I think it's really got the opportunity to transform the center, and there's been a lot of work put into it, and I think it shows in all of the information that Mr. Cahill just gave us. I would like to reinforce what Mr. Kane said, that the inspectional services need to be brought into this early in the process, so that the developers and the town understand what the issues are going to be going forward, if there are going to be any, so that these projects can flow more smoothly. So I think that can happen. And again, Mr. Cahill, thank you for all that hard work. It's been what? It's really 3 years now, right?
4 years, really.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Cahill. I think that was all the board member comments or questions.
Great. I will go right into Article 35, which was the marijuana article.
Very good. Thank you.
So let me just pull that one up separately. So I think, as many people know, 2 years ago, the town at special town meeting voted to allow marijuana establishments in town. So all of the two uses we're about to talk to are already approved in town. This article, what it does is would just allow them into 2 more zoning districts than they are allowed now. So the 2 uses we're talking about, if you can see here, is marijuana cultivator and craft marijuana cultivator cooperative. So currently they're only allowed in the office research and limited office research districts. This proposal would allow them to also be in the limited industrial district. So let me just scroll on down for the map and actually go full screen. And as you can see here, I'm hoping the colors are showing up on your screens. The places where these uses are currently allowed are the limited office research district, which is in purple, which you can see to the center left of town, and the office research district, which you can see a sliver just to the north of 290 and down in the southeast quadrant of town. So this proposal would allow these two uses to operate in the limited industrial zoning district as well. And you can see that in blue, which is mostly in the Route 20 corridor and down on the Fortune Boulevard Centec East project towards Grafton, the primary two areas. And currently this would, well, I should mention that this would mirror or copy the same districts where independent testing laboratories and marijuana product manufacturers are also allowed. So these are the three districts where those two uses are allowed. And now these, if this were to pass, these two uses would be allowed in all three districts as well. And that's really, there's not too much more to it than that. So I will hand it back over to you.
Thank you. Any questions, board members? It's pretty straightforward. Okay, I'm not seeing anything. Thank you very much, Mr. Cahill.
All right, thank you.
All right. That brings us to item number 9 on the agenda, which is to review and act on recommendations for the August 8th, 2020 annual town meeting. Mr. Mizikar, if you'd like to take over now.
I'd be happy to. I'd like to make a, I know the board has been through the warrant several times, given the drawn out process that we've had for town meeting, but this is your opportunity to record your recommendations if you're comfortable with doing so. And I would be happy to walk the board through a couple different options to bundle some of these articles in your motions based upon, like categories. So if you want me to proceed that way, I'd be happy to do that.
I would be fine with that. I think that's the best way to proceed.
Yeah, and I'll keep track of the articles as we go through them so we don't lose track of anything. First and foremost, Article 1, which is transfer fiscal year 20 funds, Article 21, which are prior fiscal year bills, and Article 27, which is an article that originally requested to authorize easements for Lake Street and Hialeah Drive related to the school project. We would move to have those defeated because they are no longer necessary like we thought they would have been when we originally crafted this warrant. So I don't know if the board wanted to consider Articles 1, 21, and 27, which we would seek a motion to defeat.
So, Mr. Mizikar, just as a question, should I take a roll call vote on each one of these recommendations?
I will try to bundle them, as tight as possible. So yes, I think that will be necessary.
Okay, so are there any questions about the first 3 articles which we're defeating? Okay, then I
Madam
will
Chairman.
take Mr. Kane.
I just have a procedural question. We've used the word bundling this evening. We had a conversation, I believe, at the last meeting about the concept of bundling. And if we bundle this evening, are we stating our support for bundling at town meeting? Or are the two bundlings completely separate?
Two separate bundles of joy, in my opinion. Just trying to move through the warrant with like functional areas. No indication of motions made at town meeting with multiple articles.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, so with that aside, I'll take a motion to vote to not approve these 3 articles.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so for a roll call vote, Mr. LeBeau,
Aye.
Mr. Samia,
Aye.
Mr. DiPaolo,
Aye.
Mr. Kane.
Aye.
Ms. Cassavant, aye.
Board members, I'll be a little aggressive with my next proposal, which would be to consider Articles 2 through 14, which are all related to the core operating and capital expenditures of the town. Article 2 being the operating budget, 3 through 5 being revenues that are used to offset the tax rate. Article 6 is to pay medical expenses of disabled police and firefighters. 7 is the solid waste operating budget. 8 and 9 are sewer operating and sewer capital budgets. 10 and 11 are water operating and water capital budgets. Article 12 is stormwater. Articles 12 and 13 are stormwater operating and stormwater capital. And Article 14 is the general capital budget. Happy to answer any questions you may have about any of those, but those are our core financial articles related to operations and capital investments for fiscal year 21.
Madam Chairman,
Mr. DiPaolo,
if I may to Mr. Mizikar, can you just remind us, with all the maturations of the budget over, the past several months, the only one of these articles, or the only two, I believe, are the operating budget and the general capital budget that actually changed from the initial recommendation. Is that correct?
There were minor adjustments within the utility budgets, trying to be conservative in our revenue estimates. We're really hoping that our FY20 estimates are related to a timing issue and not actual revenue reductions. But for instance, I can briefly go through the sewer spending plan was reduced by 80,000. Stormwater was held level. Water was reduced by $220,000, and solid waste was held level.
Okay, thank you.
any other questions? Okay, there being none, I'll take a motion to approve those articles.
Madam Chair, move approval of, move the board recommend Articles 2 through
Yeah,
14.
Second.
Motion was made and seconded for recommendation. Selectman LeBeau,
Aye.
Selectman Samia,
Aye.
Selectman DiPaolo,
Aye.
Selectman Kane,
Aye.
Selectman Cassavant, aye. Next bundle, Mr. Mizikar.
So the next group of articles will include the establishment of spending limits for revolving accounts, for the transportation revolving account, and the Donahue Rowing Center. That is a standing article. There's one change this year. We're requesting an increase in the total spending for Donahue Rowing Center up from $250,000 to $300,000. For purposes of making additional capital investments that are required in the property. These revolving accounts, as the board knows, utilize revenues that are raised for particular purposes and then reinvested in those services or facilities that generate the revenue. So the transportation program through the COA and the Donahue Rowing Center. It's probably best to take that article by itself.
Move approval. I'm not sure the article number. Is that 15?
Yes.
15, yes.
Yeah, move the board recommend Article 15.
Madam Chairman,
Mr. Kane.
Madam Chairman, just one question. Given that its revenue is the result of activities at the center, and the head of the Charles is canceled, are we forecasting a level amount of business at the rowing center or an actual increase?
We are anticipating a reduction in revenue year over year, but we have sufficient funds on hand already to account for these projects.
Okay,
So-
thank you very much.
Yep, sure.
Second.
Okay, so to recommend, we'll take a roll call vote. Mr. LeBeau?
Aye.
Mr. Samia?
Aye.
Mr. DiPaolo?
Aye.
Mr. Kane?
Aye.
Ms. Cassavant, aye.
Okay, so I'll take, this will include several articles. First and foremost is Article 16, which is the operating budget for the SMC through the PEG Access Program. Will receive revenues from Selco to cover the cost of the PEG Access programming. This is the second year that we'll operate that. It's roughly $426,000. Article 17, which is funding for counseling and education services for SYSF. It's $150,000, which matches the total funding that the town provided to that organization for services to residents in fiscal year 20. And then Article 39, which is funding for the Lake Quinsigamon Commission, it's proposed at $30,000 utilizing free cash to assist with primarily invasive weed control in the main body of the lake, and then also within Newton Pond this year. Newton Pond is at the headwaters and part of the watershed. It's seeing a significant increase in the amount of invasives, and we're proposing to utilize those funds to help eradicate those weeds.
Any questions? Okay. Take a motion to recommend.
Madam Chair, I think I've got the numbers right. Move we recommend 16, 17, and 39.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Mr. LeBeau?
Aye.
Mr. Samia?
Aye.
Mr. DiPaolo?
Aye.
Mr. Kane?
Aye.
Okay, myself, aye.
We'll take two Salco articles next, Articles 18 and Article 26. Article 18 is a request for a borrowing authorization through the town for Salco for $15 million. This debt will be repaid through Salco rate and will not have an impact on the tax rate itself. The funds will be used in matching dollar for dollar cash on hand that Selco has for their fiber to the home upgrade of the cable plant. The intent of this project is to, as best we can, future-proof the operations of the video side of the house and move from our coax cable environment into a fiber optic cable to better support residents through internet service provision and more modern means for video services within the community. And the second is for Selco to acquire, using their own funds, 3 parcels of land just off of Route 9 and Worthington Avenue that are currently owned by National Grid. This land not only is adjacent to a Selco substation and was formerly used by National Grid as a substation, it is also desirable land that National Grid approached Selco for their interest in and could be used within Selco's assets in the future, even if expansion of the substation isn't required.
Any questions? Okay. Take a motion to,
Move we recommend Articles 18 and 26.
Second.
okay. Mr. LeBeau?
Aye.
Mr. Samia?
Aye.
Mr. DiPaolo? Mr. Kane?
Aye.
And myself, aye.
Article 19 is the town's annual revenue from Chapter 90 from the Commonwealth, just under $990,000 for the year, and is consistent with what we've received in years past, and we utilize that for the annual road improvement program. Although not very similar, Article 20 is a transfer of $18,000 in funds from the sale of cemetery lots to perpetual care of the cemetery. I'll stop there and allow the board's consideration of those two articles, 19 and 20.
Move the board recommend Articles 19 and 20.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, Mr. LeBeau.
Aye.
Mr. Samia.
Aye.
Mr. DiPaolo.
Aye.
Mr. Kane.
Aye.
Myself, aye.
Board members, Article 22 is to authorize the establishment of a memorandum of understanding with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for the reimbursement of transportation costs for foster care students who attend Shrewsbury Public Schools. While this is not a significant revenue source, it is an opportunity for the town to receive funding from the state from those purposes and help recover some of those costs.
We recommend Article 22.
Second.
Any other further discussion? Okay, Selectman LeBeau.
Aye.
Selectman Samia.
Aye.
Selectman DiPaolo.
Aye.
Selectman Kane.
Aye.
Myself, aye.
So I'll take 4 articles together, Articles 23, 24, 25, and 28. They're all related to land-like acquisitions or dispositions. Article 23 is provides the ability for the Board of Selectmen to dispose of 1 through 7 Maple Avenue, which is the current location of the Beale School, for $1 in accordance with the process that the town will use to go through a request for proposals to dispose of the property in accordance with the best interest of the town center and other economic development within the community. Article 24 and 25 is for the acquisition of land along North Quinsigamon Avenue, specifically 268 and 274, for water purposes. It's within the 400-foot buffer zones of 2 of our Lambert wellheads that we use for our water service system. And Article 28 is layout makes certain private streets public, Point Road and a portion of Nelson Point Road.
Any questions? Go ahead, Mr. LeBeau.
Move the board recommend Articles 23, 24, 25, 28.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? Selectman LeBeau.
Aye.
Selectman Samia.
Aye.
Selectman DiPaolo.
Aye.
Selectman Kane.
Aye.
Myself, aye.
Article 29 is amendment to the personnel bylaw, which continues our modernization of this bylaw and moves consistent with the classification and compensation study that was conducted by the Personnel Board in fiscal year 2020 to move from a longevity-based compensation system to a performance-based compensation system for employees, and further makes amendments to all areas of the document to make it gender neutral. And finally, it adjusts bereavement leave section consistent with other union contracts and just more modern thought processes for afforded time off for individuals who've lost family members.
Madam Chairman, we recommend Article 29.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Selectman LeBeau.
Aye.
Selectman Samia.
Aye.
Selectman DiPaolo.
Aye.
Selectman Kane.
Aye.
Myself, aye.
Article 30 is a citizen's petition that is offered to seek town meeting's approval to request a ballot question and adopt the Community Preservation Act in accordance with Massachusetts general laws.
Madam Chair, move the board not recommend Article 30.
Second.
Any further discussion? Selectman LeBeau.
Aye.
Selectman Samia.
Aye.
Selectman DiPaolo.
Aye.
Selectman Kane.
Aye.
Myself, aye.
Board members, Articles 31, 32, and 33, and 34 seek to amend the zoning bylaws and zoning maps pursuant to Mr. Cahill's presentation this evening within the town center.
Madam Chairman, just one sec. Move the board recommend articles. I'm sorry, I need to check. Is 34, Kevin, is that the marijuana
Yes.
one? Was that 35?
No, 35
Okay.
is marijuana. Yep.
35 is, okay. I move the board recommend articles 31, 32, 33, and 34.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Mr. LeBeau?
Aye.
Mr. Samia?
Aye.
Mr. DiPaolo?
Aye.
Mr. Kane?
Aye.
And myself, aye.
Articles 35 and 36. Article 35 is to amend specific zoning districts to allow for and realize that the marijuana industry is more vertical and cultivation and processing should be co-located within zoning districts. So we're allowing for the expansion of where cultivation is permissible, consistent with where processing and manufacturing is through Article 35. And Article 36 amends certain aspects of the zoning bylaw, changing from commercial business to limited industrial based upon the request of a landowner who purchased Worcester Sand and Gravel and adjacent properties in the northwestern section of the community.
Madam Chairman, I'm going to have to recuse myself from Article 35, but I will move that we recommend Article 36.
Okay, so let's vote on Article 36 and then we can double back to 35.
Second.
Any further discussion on Article 36? Mr. LeBeau?
Aye.
Mr. Samia?
Aye.
Mr. DiPaolo?
Aye.
Mr. Kane?
Aye.
Myself, aye. So if we want to go back to Article 35, Mr. LeBeau will recuse himself. We'll take a motion from someone else.
Madam Chair,
Move article. I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Samia.
I recommend, we move that the board recommend approval of Article 35.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Mr. Samia? Oh, we just need to vote approval. Okay, Mr. Samia?
Aye.
Okay, Mr. DiPaolo?
Aye.
Mr. Kane?
Aye.
Myself, aye.
And Madam Chair, I just like that the minutes reflect that I recused myself.
Okay, very good.
Board members, Article 37 is seeking to adopt Massachusetts General Law, Section 148, Chapter 148, Section 26H, requiring sprinklers within boarding houses. This is a requirement for boarding houses, which are structures which are offered for rent but have common kitchen areas and potentially common bathrooms. To have sprinkler systems within them within a 5-year period of the town adopting them. So it does impact current property owners and would impact properties that would be rented through various online platforms like Airbnb.
Move we recommend Article 37.
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. LeBeau?
Aye.
Mr. Samia?
Aye.
Mr. DiPaolo?
Aye.
Mr. Kane?
Aye.
Myself, aye.
Article 38 is a general bylaw addition to add a section to regulate donation containers within the community. The board members, Selectman DiPaolo has briefed you on this previously, and we provided this, and it gives the Board of Selectmen authority to have an application process and regulatory oversight of these collection bins throughout the community, which, as you all know, can become an eyesore if not properly maintained.
Move we recommend Article 38.
Second.
I'd like to thank Mr. DiPaolo for his efforts on this. I know it's, especially now, we're seeing a lot more dumping around these bins, and it will be a relief to have a way to go about making sure that this behavior stops. Any other discussion? Okay, Mr. LeBeau,
Aye.
Mr. Samia,
Aye.
Mr. DiPaolo,
Aye.
Mr. Kane,
Aye.
myself, aye.
Board members, two final miscellaneous articles that normally occur towards the beginning of the warrant. Article 40 is to receive reports of town officers and committees, if any are required. And Article 41 is to establish the trustees of the Wright and Harlow Charitable Fund.
Madam Chairman, I don't think we usually act on Article 40 unless we hear reports of officers and committees. I
Okay.
move we recommend, and I believe that's been our practice. I move
That's correct.
Yeah, I move we recommend Article 41.
Second.
Okay, any other comments or discussions on Article 41? Okay, there being none, Mr. LeBeau,
Aye.
Mr. Samia,
Aye.
Mr. DiPaolo,
Aye.
Mr. Kane,
Aye.
myself, aye.
I think that takes us the whole way through the warrant.
Okay, I think that it does as well. All right, thank you, Mr. Mizikar. Item number 10 is to review and act on the establishment, charge, and goals of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. So board members, you will recall at our last meeting, it was decided that Selectman LeBeau and I would take this offline and work to create a document that brought together the different thoughts and ideas and suggestions that were heard when we last discussed this, or the many times that we've discussed this. There is a draft in your drive so that we can continue working to refine what we're looking for in creating this committee. So I'd like to just open it up for discussion at this point.
Madam Chairman,
Mr. Kane.
I want to thank the folks who have worked on the draft. I do think it's critically important that we change the first few lines and we speak of how we're inviting other elected and appointed people to, from their board, appoint someone to serve on this committee. Certainly, it's not our intention to pretend that we can have the appointing authority over other groups that don't report to us, but I think it's critically important that we have that language inviting them to participate because each one plays a critical role in our community. Secondly, I still go back to the number being, 20 to 30. We don't know how many people are going to come out. I know what I'm interested in doing is finding people who are in the middle. They don't think the world is perfect. At the same point, they don't think the world is absolutely horrible. I think that's the only way we're going to achieve our objective is by getting people who are down the middle without an axe to grind. So those would be my two lead-off comments. I want to again thank those who have spent time trying to wordsmith this to that to the point at which it is today. Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chairman,
Mr. DiPaolo?
I really just want to follow up on Mr. Kane's comment. I'm not, I don't know why, but I'm not sure what he was recommending be changed in the draft.
I think, Madam Chairman,
Mr. Kane?
and the first line or two references other boards or commissions in town, some elected, some appointed. And I think it's important that we make sure the final language indicates that we're not appointing them, we're not telling them, we're inviting them. Because ultimately, those who are elected report to the voters. voters, those who are appointed, report to those appointing authorities. I wanted to make it clear that it was an invitation. It was not us somehow appointing others that frankly don't report to us. And then my other point was I thought the number of people to participate should be greater than what I've seen in the last draft, being 20.
Thank you. Madam Chairman, I might not be looking at the right draft. What I'm seeing is 5 members of boards and commissions and 15 members. Is that the draft everybody else?
You are looking at the correct draft. I think what Mr. Kane is saying is that where it has those 5 members listed at the first part, it's bulleted out, that perhaps instead of them being members of the committee, they would just be invited to participate.
No, Madam Chairman, I'm saying they should be members of the committee. It's just that we don't get to appoint them. They either are elected or they're appointed by other folks. They themselves, in my humble opinion, should have one of their members step forward to participate as a member of the committee.
Okay, I understand what you're saying.
So,
Yeah.
Madam Chairman, just so we're clear, so basically we're inviting representatives from these committees or commissions, right?
Madam
they're
Chairman,
not part of the total
that's my
count.
language. It's my language simply because it's our committee that we're forming, but a variety of those people don't report to us. They are
Right.
elected or they are appointed by others. So I believe the appropriate avenue is to invite them to appoint a member of their own group to participate as a member in this group.
Okay, thank you. So are they part of this up to 30 people?
In my opinion, they would be. I keep going back, Mo, and if you don't mind, Madam Chairman, a little history here. And I don't remember, Mo, in the fiscal study, if you and then Selectman Fiore were members or just helping, if you will. But by virtue of having a few people who were active in the committee, not necessarily steering debate, but each of you, one on the revenue side, as I recall, and one on the expenditure side, you were able to clear up questions meeting to meeting or immediately by virtue of your knowledge of town government. And it was extremely useful, so people didn't waste their time going down various rabbit warrens. I remember there were, at that point, what was very popular in the press was taking public employees and switching them from their pension system to 401k. And I think it was you, Mo, who walked people through how you just can't go and do that by virtue of collective bargaining obligations, existing contracts, and state statute. So having someone there from these other boards and commissions, in my opinion, helps to cut the underbrush. It doesn't steer direction of conversation. It doesn't change the outcome, but it puts someone in the room with actual experience and firsthand knowledge who could assist those who aren't as involved in municipal government, at least in understanding some of the more ministerial aspects of it.
Okay, thank you. I got it. Thanks.
Okay, any other comments or discussion?
Well, Madam Chair,
Mr. DiPaolo?
so I guess well, my sense is that, and I guess the way Mr. Kane is wording it, it probably might accomplish the same thing, but I am not thinking a member of the board should be on it. Actually, any of those commissions, committees, I think it would be more appropriate that they were down with library, police, fire, etc., as a resource to this task force. I thought we had said at the last meeting or the one before, I was track of time, that we weren't going to have any such people as being part of the committee, that we wanted it to be a citizens committee and have them report back to the board, and particularly not have a member on the board so that the people on the task force were, they didn't feel as constrained by having somebody with some potential authority to steer that in an area where somebody might think it shouldn't go. So I think on a commission, a task force like this, that it should be a group of citizens who have access to the town staff, the boards, the commissions, but that as a resource to collect information or help facilitate whatever they're working on. But I don't think they should be members. And I guess that's really my thought.
Madam
Mr.
Chair.
Samia? Yeah, I could tell you're unmuted.
So I'm in agreement with Mr. DiPaolo. I would rather have the charges here. I would say have the various boards here be resources, and I would say up to 30 people. That being that maybe we have a situation where we get only 18 people and would want to move forward, and rather than prolong this out, maybe we get 50 people applying for it. I don't know, but I'm comfortable going up to 30 people. Doesn't mean we're going to get that. For some of the vacancies we've had a few people apply for one position, and sometimes it's one person for one position. So, I'd rather keep it up to 30 people at large, in effect.
Yeah, I also had written down up to 30 as a way to protect ourselves in case we don't have the interest that we're thinking we'll have. Any other discussion?
Madam Chairman, if I might, just one more thing.
Sure.
I don't know if people are thinking about what they want to do on those items. I agree with Mr. Samia on up to 30. I think at some place and probably down, well, it doesn't make any difference where, but I think that that this task force seeks input from any of the boards, or particularly the town staff, through a designee of the town manager. So we don't have multiple people going through the organization asking questions of different department heads or assistant department heads, only for just organization and efficiency. That is what we had on the at least the second fiscal study committee, that I don't know if it was formal or not, but it was through one person. I forgot who it was. And I think that really would be appropriate, because if you get 20 or 30 people, the staff and even the boards could get bombarded with questions, some of them the same question multiple times. So I think it would be appropriate, at least for town staff, that any queries or whatever, any request for information from a town staff member, a town employee, be through the designee of the town manager's office.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. Mr. DiPaolo, do you think that's in addition to inviting those, the 5 that were bulleted at the top, elected or appointed individuals to participate, or do you think that's instead of?
No, well, again, I don't think they should be there. I think a board or a commission, well, not completely independent, or a little bit independent of the staff. They're appointed or elected boards. So we could include it in the group of the town employees. or, I guess it would be, I guess it could be up to the individual boards how they want to do it. It doesn't make any difference to me. I just think it's important that town hall questions to members of town employees be through a designee of the town manager's office.
Okay. Any other comments? All right, so
Madam Chairman,
Mr. LeBeau.
I mean, I have a question. I've made my feelings known at several meetings previously, and I've made my feelings known about the makeup of this body. I think we've heard 3 members state how they feel this body should be organized relative to inclusion or exclusion of elected and appointed officials. I don't know what you're thinking.
So I can see the benefit of either setup, right? So I think the overall goal has to be that we set up this committee so that they don't feel that they're being in any way hindered or that information is being withheld from them. I think this committee needs to feel that they have the opportunity to examine and evaluate the policies and procedures that we currently have in place within the town of Shrewsbury. And there's not going to be somebody making sure that that doesn't happen. And I don't anticipate that that would be the case anyway. I just think the perception has to be considered as well. So if we weren't to invite participation from elected or appointed leaders in the community, I think that it would be important to go the route that Mr. DiPaolo is suggesting, where there is a designated staff member. I think there does need to be someone there familiar with town government and how the departments work, just how things work, in order to help facilitate, maybe just at the beginning until the committee kind of gets going. But again, like I could see where this might be viewed by the committee as an attempt to limit their ability to do their work. That's my thought on that. So that's kind of where I'm stuck.
Well, Madam Chairman, if I may, I have some pretty strong feelings about this. In my original remarks on June 9th and my remarks on June 23rd, which were both presented to the board in written fashion, and I believe is reflected in the minutes. I did strongly support the concept of a mix of residents and government leaders. So frankly, I mean, we all have our own decision-making processes. I don't have any memory, as Mr. DiPaolo mentioned, of a discussion that we had about this. I know we've had some long meetings, but I thought I've paid attention pretty well. So this came as a bit of a surprise to me to hear this evening. I take an entirely different perspective. I think it's very important for government officials to serve on this body for a variety of reasons. And I think it's very different to be a voting member of this body than to be some type of designated support staff to this body. Honestly, I think if you're involved in the process, rather than sitting back in the much more comfortable support situation, you're not involved in what I fully expect, anticipate, and to some degree hope are going to be very awkward discussions. And I think it's much easier for one to learn through those by participating in those discussions. So I think we're actually excluding that opportunity from policymakers of the town. I think there are multiple paths. There's no one right answer to this, certainly, and I'm not suggesting that my position is the right one, but I do think there are many ways to get here. I do think by having an open body of 30 people, I don't think that's the best model to get some achievable, implementable actions. I think by participation of government individuals, that is going to happen. The document that you and I have submitted to the board, Madam Chairman, in which you and I went through our own bit of negotiation on about the size, we talked about 5 out of 20. Now we're talking about 5 out of 30. So, you know, we operate as a democracy, majority rules. So I'll find it very difficult for that small body to dominate the work of this body. And honestly, I find the suggestion that somehow there's intimidation, latent intimidation there. I just don't agree with that concept at all. I don't think that's a situation that we have in this town, and I'm surprised to hear of that suggestion. I also think, talking about the Board of Selectmen exclusively, I mean, for better or for worse, we are a body that has been selected by a group of citizens who decided to come together on a given day and choose their leaders. And there's nobody else on that body that has that position. So I think a member of the Board of Selectmen represents the town, represents the wide number of residents of the town. And I believe they are due a position on this board. And I think that's entirely different than bringing one person from the community to serve as that. We've been elected by many. Granted, elections, there haven't been a whole lot of people, but the opportunity has always been there. So I'm just really surprised at this concept that the board should not be included. I also wonder about the credibility of this body without government officials on it. I've received phone calls from people asking me, John, do we really need this thing? And I'm wondering if, and I've told them, yes, I think we do. We absolutely do. And I'm wondering if the fact that there are no government officials on this body, that the recommendations that it make, some might feel are not truly representative of the community. So I think that's another reason why, particularly a member of the Board of Selectmen should be included. I previously suggested that we have, you know, this not just be about racism, this be about various discriminations, including ageism, disability discrimination, etc. And that's why I think those bodies should be included. So, and lastly, I mean, I think we've been elected, we put government people on virtually every body we establish, and most of the time, we put a member of the Board of Selectmen on it. And to suddenly say, because this thing is so important that we should not serve, I find, honestly, to be an abrogation of our responsibility. So I'll get off my soapbox now. I appreciate the board's patience in hearing me out. And obviously, the first thing one learns as a member of the Board of Selectmen is to count to 3. And I'm anxiously looking to see which side 3 falls on.
Madam Chairman,
Mr. DiPaolo.
I think this committee is a much different committee than we have appointed in the past. So I think that the typical rules or the traditions as far as appointments or inclusion, I don't think they necessarily apply here. But having said that, if it's as to Mr. Kane's idea that these five, four, whatever, five organizations, if they're invited, fine, but to specifically designate that they have to be on the board, then I remain opposed to it. My initial reaction when we started talking about this and coming into the first discussion was that we need somebody from the board on it, and we should have some people from within government on it. And the more I thought about it, the more I think I would be interested to see what a group totally comprised of citizens who aren't in government would recommend to the board. So that's my thought. I would be willing to compromise on invite, but to say that these people have to be on the committee, I'm sorry, I just don't agree with it.
Madam Chairman,
Madam,
Mr. Kane?
my invite, I didn't mean to create an issue that I think I've created here. I think these folks should be, I guess I would simply say again, using language, sworn members of this group. My point in using the word invite is simply that, who are we to tell another elected body, you have somebody? We can invite them, but we can't tell them they have to now appoint somebody. So I've got myself wordsmithed into a corner, I guess. My point is, I think they should be on. However, we don't have the ability to tell them to be on. So that's why I'm using the invitation. And then do we appoint them as a member of the group, that person who is sent by one of these other groups? I suppose we then do appoint them, if you agree with my standpoint. So I didn't mean to get us caught up in invite versus anything, Mr. DiPaolo. My only point is we can't go around telling other elected boards what they have to do, nor is we can tell other bodies who aren't appointed by us what they should do. I'm sorry for the game of semantics.
Madam Chairman.
Mr. LeBeau?
I agree with Selectman Kane. I think I understand what he's saying. I appreciate I appreciate the distinction that he's made, and I think he's absolutely right. I think it is, we invite a particular body if they would like to designate someone to serve as a member of this body. I have no issue with that. But if that is the model that we use, these individuals are full voting members, as Mr. Kane said, sworn members and participants of the body. If the choose not, inform the board that for whatever reason they don't want to participate, okay. I mean, we tried. They have their respective authority, but that's fine with me. I mean, that's not an issue. That's not a point of contention at all. I appreciate Mr. Kane's thoughtfulness about that, and I think he's absolutely right. But I feel very strongly about having some government people on as voting members. And full disclosure, board, when Chairman Cassavant and I were running through this, I mean, there was a little bit of a back and forth. Well, if it's 30, how many government people will we have? If it's 20, how many government people will we have? And we both agreed we wanted to keep the proportion of government people down. I mean, we had talked about a max of 40% government, and obviously this is vastly less than that. But, and back to my original remarks on June the 9th, that it would always be dominated by non-government residents of the community.
Okay, Madam Chair.
Mr. DiPaolo?
So let me ask, if a member of the Board of Selectmen is on this committee, are we designating that person is the chair, or is the committee going to pick their chair? Because
Madam Chairman?
Mr. LeBeau?
I mean, I'm sorry, Mr. DiPaolo. I mean, I had I had said, you know, it's not in the charge. We're not dictating. The body should appoint its leadership. The body should decide if it wants to break up into any subcommittees. The body runs the body. All we're doing is saying, you know, here's the team. Go make up your rules and play your game.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chairman,
Mr. King?
I think I heard my colleague speak, so I will yield if Mr. Samia started to ask to be recognized.
Mr. Samia?
Thank you. Yeah, Madam Chair, in deference to Mr. LeBeau here, I feel I still, while I would like it to be ideally 30 at large, he's given some persuasive points that if we invite these people and they come and it's 5 out of 30, I can live with that it's an independent chair. And it gives some direction, but not an overshadowing. I'm comfortable with that. I mean, where I was coming originally was similar to what you said, and it's just to be, I didn't want there to be any look afterwards saying that there was any steering by any of the boards.
All lives matter.
With an independent chair, I'm comfortable with that. So I'm okay with inviting the 5 boards and up to 30.
Okay. Mr. Kane, did you want to make an additional comment?
Madam Chairman, my only question is who has the pen going forward? And that I would greatly appreciate it if we would agree to a process with documents going forward that they are provided on the Thursday prior to a meeting by whoever is doing it, whoever has the pen, distributed by the manager's office to ensure there's no risk of breaking the open meeting law, so that we have time to evaluate it, perhaps offer further amendments that night. When Mr. DiPaolo and I were on the Glavin Reuse Committee, how many years ago, we worked with members of the planning board and a variety of other groups in and out of town hall. And one of our critical elements was, you know, nothing goes out later than Thursday evening, to make sure people have a chance to digest it, ask the manager any questions on the Friday and the Monday and the Tuesday before our meeting on that Tuesday evening. So I think I would ask that whoever has the pen on this, that we agree that be the process going forward. Thank you.
Mr. Kane, to that point, I know that this did not make it by Thursday evening, but with only 1 week between the meeting of last week and then meeting this week, we just weren't, Selectman LeBeau and I weren't able to collaborate on this until Saturday. So I think that where we have a 2-week period between this meeting and our next meeting, that's a reasonable expectation. So there definitely needs to be a few more edits. I'm not sure if we need to vote. I mean, I guess we could vote, but what I would like to understand is the number of members. Are we going with up to 30 or are we limiting it to 20? I think that's probably one of the first questions that needs to be answered.
Madam Chair.
Madam Chairman.
Go ahead.
Mr. Samian, I think you got in there first with your clicker.
Up to 30 is where I'm at.
Okay. So should we take a vote on up to 30?
I would argue, Madam Chairman, that whoever's going to take the pen on this, there's a sense of the board, from what I've heard, of a total membership up to 30.
Okay.
I don't
up to
think we
30
need a
it is.
vote this evening. Whoever has the pen can simply move forward with those elements and the other elements discussed this evening, and I think we then should be in pretty good shape.
I've got the pen. I'm writing all this down. And then the other question that I'm left with, and I'm getting a sense that the majority of the board is comfortable with the invitation of various elected and appointed boards to appoint a member of their group to participate in this group, which then they would become a full member of the group. If I'm not correct in that, please let me know.
Madam Chairman, that's certainly what I propose. That's certainly what I believe I heard my colleagues agree with me. And there's also a fact that we don't have the ability to tell certain groups to do certain things. We can encourage, we can invite, but we can't tell them to go do certain things, including be a member here. So I don't know of an option. If someone has a better option, please mention it. But it seemed to me that we had a consensus, at least to put it in the next draft, that we would invite those groups to, again, keeping with this theme of being an organic effort, as those groups to discuss it and bring forward a member to serve on this committee.
Okay, and then I think that's what I'm hearing too. And then the last piece of it would be to come up with a designee from the town manager's office that would then be the resource staff member to funnel any and all requests for information or queries through.
Madam Chair,
Mr. DiPaolo.
I think seeing we're laying this on the town manager to make the decision, perhaps we could ask him if he thinks that's the way he'd like the queries to be directed.
Great idea. Mr. Mizikar, what would you think about that?
I 100% support that approach, both from a practical standpoint and then an interest to be able to help this community reach its conclusions that it needs to reach.
Thank you. Okay, so I think that we are ready to move on to another draft of this, which Selectman LeBeau and I can send around by the Thursday before our next meeting, which is August 11th. Everyone is okay with that.
Madam Chairman, may I ask what I consider to be the other end of the bookends, if you will, regarding the advertisement and, if you will, formal invitations to the public to submit a letter of interest. What are we thinking? Do we want to cover that this evening, or do we want to cover that at a future meeting?
Well, I'm not sure. Can we put something out to ask members of the public to submit a letter of interest, even though we haven't fully formed this document?
Oh, okay, perhaps again, I wasn't clear with my language and I apologize. What I'm saying is, are we going to advertise for 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks? What are people thinking relative to how long we allow it to be out there? My concern is we've yet to start August. And though plenty of people are in town in August, plenty of people are traveling to visit family. And I want to err on the side of a longer window for people to have a chance to, who may be traveling or who may be swamped at work or what have you, to have a chance to consider this, review the charge, talk it over with their family or whatever they need to do. I just think the window should be wider open than narrow. And I'm just broaching that subject this evening.
Sorry, I did completely misunderstand you. I apologize. And I agree with you. I think the window should be longer, at least 3 weeks, to give people an opportunity to have a chance to apply. I also think we need to be very broad in making sure that this gets out to different groups within the community through whatever means we have available to us, not just through the usual channels.
Madam Chairman?
Mr. LeBeau.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to suggest to the board that we enlist the manager's office help in drafting an invitation or a notice of asking folks to express their interest, putting out a request for letters of interest. It's very interesting. I mean, generally, when we post for any kind of body, we try to be totally, we don't care about people's backgrounds. I don't know how else to say it. When we want to appoint somebody to the zoning board of appeals, we don't ask them about their personal background or their issues with the discrimination or diversity, et cetera. So I think in this case, we have to have a document that I think seeks people from a diverse background pool, all kinds of experiences, and also to seek out people who've had negative experiences. But I think that is that's a drafting challenge that I want to make sure we do right. And there are multiple considerations about how we do that. So I'd like the manager's office and possibly to think about from an HR personnel perspective, from a legal perspective, from all perspectives, how we could cast the widest net, so to speak, indicate what we're looking for, but do it in an appropriate fashion.
Okay, I think that's a very, very good point, that we aren't usually as interested in people's backgrounds as we are in this situation where we're looking for an intentionally diverse group or cross-section of the community to be a part of this committee.
So it would be my suggestion that if the manager's office could take it on, that document was similarly presented to the board no later than the Thursday before our next meeting.
Mr. Mizikar, would that be an appropriate timeline given other initiatives going on in the manager's office right now?
Yeah, we will seek support from folks in the community that can help us and draft something up and get it to you for your review.
Thank you very much. Okay. So I think we're ready to move on from this. Come back with a final draft at our next meeting, providing board members with plenty of time to make sure that they can take a look at the draft and then give comments through the manager. So that's going to bring us to item number 11, which is to review and act on the goals of the Board of Selectmen. We had some edits placed into our drive that we could use as a jumping off point for a discussion. If anybody would like to make any comments on their edits.
Madam Chairman,
Mr. Kane?
put in the drive.
Not the Thursday before tonight.
Yeah, I got to tell you something. I'm feeling that we are not giving ourselves a chance to success here. We've got to have some greater discipline so we have a chance to read material, ask questions, whether it be of a proponent or the manager or other people. I'm certainly not ready to talk about this. Last I knew, there was yet a third version that might be coming over the weekend that I certainly didn't see. And I'm getting really nervous about what is the actual operative document. And therefore, I would recommend we table it this evening. And again, for the Thursday before our next meeting, if it's ready, that we go with whom you as chair are perhaps circulating as the operative document and recommending certain things with it. Fine. Then we know what we're focused on and why. I think that also leads me to a second point, that the manager is I think, not at our next meeting. And I do think it's critically important that we have that interplay between our goals and his goals. So I offer those two comments this evening.
Madam Chairman?
Mr. DiPaolo?
If I could just say, as far as my edit, all I did was reorganize the order. I didn't make any changes except, I think, for two titles. And I only did it because I was anticipating something coming forward before the end of the week. And perhaps I misunderstood, but I didn't see it. So I thought one of the things that we said were an issue, at least that what I understood, was the way this thing was put together. And so I did it just to reorganize it without making text changes, only to be able to look at the document to use it as a basis for discussion. So what I did, all it was moving paragraphs around. There was no editorial changes on that.
No, I noticed that in the draft that I received from you, that it's just basically a reorganization of the existing goals as they were written by the board.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Samia.
So two things. One, I would be happy to take the pen on this one if you'd like, and go really two things. One, work off what's in our drive, what Mr. DiPaolo did, taking the goals, cutting and pasting, and there are some thoughts I think that need a little more work, and happy to take a crack at that based on what I've heard from the board. And then in the drive, I had given some comments, but that is really right now an example of longer term visioning. I think what's more important in near term is to get through goals that we worked through back last fall and have talked about since that time, and then go towards a little longer term visioning when time allows over the next few months. But to get these goals in place as soon as possible, and then from there, Mr. Mizakar's goals can follow ours, but then look towards longer term visioning. So this is more of an example at this point, utilizing concepts that we talked about in my edits. I'd say more of an example, and it's something I'd ask that we talk about going forward. But the more immediate thing is to work with the document that was originally distributed to us and put together those goals based on input from the board last fall and through now.
All right, that seems reasonable. Thank you, Mr. Samia. Anybody else?
Madam Chairman,
Mr. Kane?
I think it's reasonable as well. I would greatly appreciate it if we could have the memorandum version 1, version 2, and any other version, so we could sit at our dining room table and just walk through what was last worked on. I believe it was late fall, mid fall, and what now might be coming, and who offered what edits along the way. I think that would be very helpful in making sure, at least for me, that I have a full and complete understanding of where we've been, where we're going, where each member sees us going. So thank you very much.
Okay. Let's move on then to item number 12, which is to review and act on setting the November 3rd, 2020 ballot question to seek voter approval to exclude the debt service requirements for the police station project from the provisions of Proposition 2.5 so-called, and authorize submission to the Secretary of State for inclusion on the state ballot. Mr. Mizikar. Mr. LeBeau, did you want to jump in for a sec?
I was just going to make a motion, but if there's explanation that you'd like to have first,
I just
please.
wanted to, oh, thanks. Mr. Mizikar, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Just relative to the timing that the board needs to take action on this in advance of the first Wednesday in August, which is obviously before your next meeting. So this will put us on a single state ballot. So voters would receive one ballot rather than two separate ballots if this is approved and submitted to the Secretary of State.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, you want to move approval, Mr. LeBeau?
Yes, I do, Madam Chairman. I move the board approve the language of the ballot question relative to the police station project for inclusion on the November 3rd, 2020 ballot, and move this along to the Secretary of State.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Vote, Selectman LeBeau?
Aye.
Selectman Samia?
Aye.
Selectman DiPaolo?
Aye.
Selectman Kane?
Aye.
Okay, Selectman Cassavant, aye. Item number 13 is to review and act on a continued deliberations regarding the hearing held and closed on July 14th, 2020 concerning nuisance dog order issued on March 13th, 2020 regarding nuisance dogs at 47 Memorial Drive. So, board members, we ended our hearing and continued our deliberations to this evening's meeting in order to receive input from the animal control officer on the issue of bark collars before proceeding with our recommendations. And we've had the opportunity now to reflect on all the testimony presented to us during the hearing and recommendations from the animal control officer to allow us to move forward to our final decision. We also have with us Keith Elms, the animal control officer, who could answer any questions that we might have or give a brief overview of his recommendations if we would like that.
Madam Chairman,
Mr. DiPaolo.
I guess I'm confused where we are right now. And without having power for 3 hours at the end of the day, I didn't have a chance to catch up on a couple of things. I guess what I would like to hear first is anything, any work that the animal control officer has done in regards to this since the last meeting. Because I have some thoughts, but if they may have already been addressed, then they may not. My thoughts may not be relevant at this point. So I'd just like to know where we are in terms of anything that Mr. Elms did since the last meeting.
Mr. Elms, would you be able to give us a brief update?
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
So I did submit a report to you guys, to the selectmen on the 24th of July, and I basically just kind of outlined the situation where it stands as of now. I mean, as far as I knew at the last hearing, I mean, there weren't really anything. We didn't really find any violations committed by the Springers in terms of the orders put out at the original hearing. I did speak with the town manager's office since then, and from my discussions with them, basically, kind of what I was told was basically that because of that, no new orders can be added to the current, to what's in place already. But it is possible, kind of due to the continued complaints, to modify the existing orders. And since then, I mean, in the report I submitted, I did recommend, a new type of bar control collar, something then other than what's in place right now. Not wanting to just rely on that alone to fix the entire issue, because for all we know, a new bar collar may not solve the problem. But I did recommend that both the Springers dogs are re-enrolled in obedience training with a professional trainer, one that is approved by the animal control officer, so myself, and that we must receive documentation from the trainer upon completion of the program, and should commence by August 25th. So since that time, I have talked to the dog owner, Melinda Springer, and she is willing to try a new type of bar collar to see if that controls the problem. She has already spoken to the dog trainer I recommended, and she has enrolled her dogs with him, which should start next Monday. So if anyone has any questions on anything, more than happy to answer.
Okay, board members, any questions?
Madam Chairman,
Mr. DiPaolo.
then I am definitely confused. I thought we were going to take the last 2 weeks to think about this, and at this meeting come up with a course of action that may have included additional orders, which we, according to council, we can do. So I don't know where we are right now. I had some different thoughts. I don't know where we are right now on this, to be honest with you.
So I also,
Madam Chairman,
Mr. Kane.
I believe we're exactly where my colleague just mentioned, that we can bring forth further orders. But I also recall us wanting to get an update from the animal control officer on the efforts for the past 2 weeks regarding what he has just described to the board. So I have to be honest with you, I'm exactly where I thought I was going to be on this. I thought we took a two path approach. If Mo has further ideas, I think we're all hoping to hear something, because I fear that we simply have a situation that is unworkable. And we can meet on it, and we can meet on it all we want, but if you have two parties who believe they're working in good faith and it's not being received that way, and that certainly seems to be the situation we have, I don't know what path forward we have other than other options to quiet the dogs, which the animal control officer is exploring on our behalf, and then any further ideas that board members might have regarding additional orders. Now, perhaps I'm misremembering everything, but I'm quite comfortable with where we are right now.
So I guess part of my confusion is, are we letting the original order stand as is? Or are we making additional orders to ameliorate the situation? Because the orders that we made in good intention a year or so ago obviously didn't work.
So, Mr. Madaus, would you be able to weigh in on that for us, please?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you. Good evening. I did go back and watch the video from the prior hearing. And this evening, you continued your deliberations to this evening. At the prior hearing, you voted to make a finding that there was no violation of the original order from dated March 13th of 2019. But I think there was a consensus of the board from what you received at the hearing that you intended to modify the orders, beginning with the requirement for a bark collar. My understanding was the board, one of the reasons we continued your deliberations was the board was going to receive from the animal control officer a recommendation about perhaps a specific product, because the original order didn't specify something that was working, or at least that was the thought, that the current bark collar does not work. So we're hoping to get something that would be more effective. And then I know the chair, for instance, had concerns from the testimony that when the owners were away, maybe something would be required we would modify the existing order from March of 19 to include a new order about having someone responsible for, on the owner's behalf when they're away, to respond to calls about excessive barking. So you didn't limit your deliberations, you continued your deliberations to this evening for modifying the original order. Because the original order, you found that they were nuisance dogs. So we're just carrying that forward.
Thank you.
So,
So go ahead, Mr. DiPaolo.
I'm sorry. As a result of that, can somebody correct me, because I may be wrong, but I didn't get a chance to see the transcript of the hearing because of the situation today, but did and I'm not saying it's right or wrong if it was done or it wasn't. Did we ask the animal control officer to recommend a new trainer to the springers? Because I don't remember that, but I could be wrong. And there's a reason I'm asking that question, but is that something that we asked Mr. Elms to do? Because I don't recall it.
My recollection, go ahead, Mr. Kane.
So my recollection is we asked the animal control officer to evaluate collars or any other method to try to put an end to this dispute. That's certainly how I left the meeting.
I would agree with that.
Excuse me?
I think we asked Mr. Elms for a recommendation on another collar.
Period.
That was my recollection. having read through the
And the,
minutes.
and the reason I'm asking, and maybe this works out fine, but it's obvious that what we ordered at the original hearing was not effective for whatever reason. And we know that the Springers said that they, and I think they provided documentation back last year, that they had somebody evaluate the dogs, and that, excuse me, they were told by the trainer, and I'm pretty sure we have the document on it, that there basically was nothing wrong with the dogs as far as barking. So I thought that to try to address this issue beyond the bark collar, that perhaps another course might be the way to go. And I made an inquiry of a veterinarian and asked about dog collars. And the answer I got is they're really, a lot of times they're not terribly effective, and is that really you can't say anyone is the right collar. So the vet recommended that, and I know this sounds kind of silly, but recommended an animal behaviorist who specializes in dogs. And one of the things they specialize in is barking. And these are highly educated and well-trained and experienced people. So my recommendation, and again, if we're already beyond that, fine. But my recommendation was that we should be ordering the Springers to engage with a animal behaviorist of a certain experience and educational level to evaluate the dog and make recommendations, because obviously that the first trainer wasn't helpful. And I know Mr. Elms might, at this point, might know who that trainer is, but I don't, it may be a good, the person may be a good trainer, but I think we're going to have to make an order, and we're going to have to live with the decision that we should be aware of who the trainer was before it was recommended. I don't know if we're stuck with that trainer now or not, and maybe it's a good trainer, but my sense is we are not going to move in a positive direction unless we understand why these dogs are barking all the time, what's setting them off. You know, another dog collar, a trainer saying I spent 2 weeks with them and the dogs are fine. And then 30 days from now, we're hearing the same complaints. I just thought we were going to take it somewhere beyond there. I know we asked about the dog collar, and certainly there was concern about somebody being responsible to take care of those dogs when the Springers are away for a day or more. So I don't know. I don't know if we can make this recommendation now or not. So I guess my question is probably to start is ask Officer Elms if they could give us some background on the trainer that he recommended, just so we have some comfort that it's somebody who really does have the experience and the knowledge to try to make some recommendations on this so we can get it resolved.
That's fine. I have spoken with the trainer they plan to use, and I can definitely submit to the board, his background and qualifications, and see if that's, proves satisfactory for everybody.
Madam Chair?
Mr. DiPaolo?
It might be as simple as, if I may ask Officer Elms, have you experienced with that trainer in the past?
I've never worked with him, but from my lengthy conversation with him and just researching the background of the company he owns, I mean, I feel he would be a very qualified candidate to work with these dogs.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chair, unless other members of the board want to move ahead tonight, I know this is going to be frustrating for everybody involved, but I really would like to see I'd like information on the trainer that was recommended so that I feel comfortable that, there's a possibility of some good results. Because the only other thing I had was to make sure in an order that that the springers, have designate somebody to be on their property and take care of those dogs when they're not on the property, because that was an issue. But if the board wants to move tonight in whatever way, I guess it's fine. But I'm just not comfortable yet that we're moving forward to really ameliorating this problem of the nuisance and the barking.
Okay. Mr. DiPaolo, I agree with what you are saying as far as possibly new bark collars and another trainer is the same thing that we did previously and may not make the situation better. Mr. Elms, do you know of any animal behaviorists?
Not personally, no. I mean, I'd have to research in the area who would be reputable for that. I don't know anybody offhand.
Okay, thank you. Mr. DiPaolo, did you have the name of an animal behaviorist?
Well, I did, but I mean, I don't think it's necessary that it be that particular person, but one person came highly recommended, and I went online and I did, no, I don't have the papers with me. I did find a couple of others who were, advanced degree, a lot of experience. They're animal behaviors. That's what they do. So yes, I guess the short answer is yes. There's probably at least 2 or 3 that are reputable. They appear to be reputable animal behaviorists.
So in addition to the animal behaviorist, I also feel strongly that we need to have someone designated to be looking after the dogs and carrying out the orders when the springers are away from home for more than 24 hours. And maybe less if board members think that that's appropriate. I just don't want to make it cumbersome. I know that there is a caretaker that lives on the property, and maybe that person could be responsible for ensuring compliance when the springers are away from the property. But I really am interested in further exploring this idea of an animal behaviorist because I'm not sure that more training is going to solve the problem. I'd be interested in what other board members think, and I am fine with moving this out until August 11th so that we can get the names of a behaviorist for the springers to use.
Madam Chairman,
Mr. Kane?
none of us own this dog or any dog that I know of that's part of a complaint. So I would respectfully offer that we be done with this. Instead of us hunting and pecking, if we have the concern that you've expressed and my colleague has expressed, and we believe the animal behaviorist is a real option, then I would move forward, or I would seek guidance from council to move forward on further amending the order, requiring that they have a person who is going to be there to monitor the dogs if they're away 2 hours. I don't care if it's 1 hour, 2 hours. 2 hours of a barking dog is a nuisance. No neighbor should have to put up with that. So I would offer a 2-hour standard. And secondly, I would offer that given that the training doesn't work and the collars have not worked, I would argue that we are willing to consider a behaviorist, but it's their job to go find one who's credentialed, not ours. We're spending way too much time trying to solve a problem that we didn't create. They have a situation, it's out of hand, whether anybody likes it or not, it's out of hand. I happen to believe it's the breed of the dog, but I'm not an animal behaviorist, so who cares what I have to say? So I would offer, unless the council recommends that this should not be followed, the 2 motions I've offered further amend it, get the order out there, give them 30 days to comply, and then we take it to the next step if need be. But we're spending way too much time trying to solve a problem that isn't ours. We didn't create it.
Mr. Madaus, would we be able to proceed in this fashion that Mr. Kane is suggesting?
Yes.
Madam
Mr.
Chairman,
DiPaolo? Yep.
if we're gonna move forward tonight, then I actually have a motion that I prepared that I can read for the board and see if they're interested in making that, you know, an addition to the original order. Because I have a different opinion than Mr. Kane on this, but to keep it moving along, I'm fine. As long, I guess my first question is, Mr. Madaus, is the board free to tell the Springers they have to engage an animal behaviorist now that they're already working with another trainer?
Yes. The statute only provides limited guidance, but it reads that the hearing authority, if a hearing authority deems a dog a nuisance dog, the hearing authority may further order that the owner or keeper of the dog take remedial action to ameliorate the cause of the nuisance behavior. So whatever the board finds necessary from the testimony received, you may impose as a order.
Oh, okay, thank you. So Madam Chairman, in that case, I'd like to read a motion because I want to make sure I get it right.
All right, go ahead, Mr. DiPaolo.
I'm gonna move that a new order be added to I think it would be order 5 that be inserted into the March 13th, 2019 notice to read: within 60 days of this mortification being issued to the Springers shall retain the services of a professional animal behaviorist such as Dr. Alice Moon Finelli of Brooklyn Veterinary Hospital, 50 Hartford Road, Brooklyn, Connecticut, or a professional of equal credentials, subject to the approval of the Board of Selectmen. The study, Bruno and Poppy, provide recommendations, training, or treatments for the 2 dogs for the purposes of ameliorating the cause of the barking. A copy of such recommendations, training, or treatments shall be provided to the town's animal control officer immediately upon receipt by the Springers, and that the Springer shall implement the recommendations, training, or treatments provided by a professional animal behaviorist without delay. That's my motion.
Mr. Madaus, is
Second.
that, okay. And Mr. Madaus, is that okay, the format?
Yes.
Okay. So the motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Mizikar?
I have some concern about the specific identification of a behaviorist, and I just would like the opportunity to talk to council about that prior to the board taking action.
Madam Chairman,
Mr. DiPaolo?
if Mr. Mizikar has concern, we could just say a professional animal behaviorist.
Take out the name.
Subject to the approval of the Board of Selectmen, so we know who the person is who's being hired. We could take that name out. I have a problem with that. I'd amend the motion.
Mr. Mizikar, are you okay with it if we amend the motion?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So we need a second on the amended motion.
Second.
Second.
Any other discussion? Take a roll call vote. Mr. LeBeau? Mr. LeBeau?
Sorry. Aye.
No problem. Mr. Samia?
Aye.
Mr. DiPaolo?
Aye.
Mr. Kane?
Aye.
And Ms. Cassavant, aye.
So, Madam Chairman,
Yes, Mr. DiPaolo.
I have one more motion regarding the dogs being unattended. So I'd like to move that motion.
Yes, please.
So a new order, I might have these numbers wrong, so they'll have to be fixed, but I think in the order that I did it, this would be new order 6. It's inserted into the March 19th notice to read, when the owners of the dogs are planning to be away from their home at 27 Memorial Drive for longer than, my suggestion is 12 hours, they shall not leave the 2 dogs outside on their property during their time away unless the springers have first retained or designated a responsible adult to care for the dogs in their absence, and such person shall be instructed to be responsive to the complaints of excessive barking if received by the town's animal control officer or the town police department.
The only thing I
would say
heard was,
12 hours, but I'm open to suggestions.
right, I heard 27 Memorial. I just want to be clear that it's 47.
Did I say 27? I have
think you might
47
have.
written down. I'm sorry.
I just want to make sure.
Okay, it's 47. 12 hours is a long time for dogs to be out with any supervision, so that's my suggestion. But if somebody wants 24, I'm happy to amend it.
I'm fine with 12 if they're going to be away for 12 hours. I'm fine with that.
As am I. So would someone like to second that motion?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? There being none, I'll take a roll call vote. Mr. LeBeau?
Aye.
Mr. Samia?
Aye.
Mr. DiPaolo?
Aye.
Mr. Kane?
Aye.
Ms. Cassavant, aye. All right, anything else on this, Mr. DiPaolo? Any other motions?
No, I am quite through. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Let's move on. That brings us to correspondence, board members. Item number 14 is a letter dated July 10th, 2020 from Shelby Marshall, Chair of the Westboro Board of Selectmen regarding the intermunicipal animal control animal inspector services. Item number 15 is an email dated July 21st, 2020 from State Representative Hannah Gain regarding governor filing another 1/12 budget for August. Item number 16 is a letter dated July 22nd, 2020 from Holly Luck, Director of the Shrewsbury Council on Aging regarding a new Council on Aging van. This is a van to replace a non-functioning Council on Aging van through the Mass DOT Rail and Transit Division. They'll provide a used van and our responsibility would be $4,489.60. That's a local match contribution that was generously donated by a community member. And the van will be inspected by our mechanic before there's a title transfer made. So thank you for the generous donation from the community member. And then lastly, item number 17 is an email dated July 24th, 2020 from Deborah Luke, 28 Patriot Lane regarding 47 Memorial Drive. Is there anything to come before the board in open session? Then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, Mr. LeBeau?
Aye.
Mr. Samia?
Aye.
Mr. DiPaolo?
Aye.
Mr. Kane?
Aye.
Ms. Cassavant? Aye. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.